Hello and welcome back to Deborn Radio Gamescast. As always, I'm your host Ryan. It's a Games Club this time. We're doing our special Halo Infinite episode, joined by my lovely duo
Finally
of
here.
co-hosts, Brett
Hello.
and Wyatt.
You know what? You know what's funny? Now that we can actually hear the intro song, the wait for you to start talking it feels so much shorter now.
It
Well, yeah,
does.
because it is like 20 seconds long. You just
Yeah.
gotta wait for the time. So yeah, we switched over to a new software for streaming. So if anything is a little wonky, we'll sort it out quickly. But hopefully nothing of that ilk happens. This is going to be the whole breakdown of Halo Infinite. We've been talking about this for a while. I think we've had a lot of opinions on Halo Infinite that have taken over many a podcast episode, and it's time to finally
a lot of emotions.
Get them out on the air.
Yeah.
And a little bit less withheld into our bodies. So this is going to follow our normal Games Club rules. First half of it is going to be a spoiler-free discussion. That's also going to be our full multiplayer discussion, because we're not obviously, multiplayer doesn't have spoilers. So we're going to talk about all the multiplayer and the spoiler-free version of the campaign stuff. So let's get spoiler-free campaign out of the way first, I think. So if anyone is listening to this episode for whether or not they should play the campaign and just like quick opinions, hasn't played it before, you guys can get your fill and head out if you've already played the multiplayer, because it's free. So let's jump in. What's everyone's, after having completed the campaign, what is everyone's like initial thoughts on whether or not this is something you think Halo fans should play?
I think
Go for it.
that because, and I'm being as rational as possible here, again, without saying anything specific. If you're looking for something that's on the same levels of 3 or Reach, you are not going to get it in Halo Infinite. But if you're a really big Halo fan and you just want to see what happens with Master Chief and his new friends next, I think that you will be happy with that, because the things that happen with Master Chief and his friends are overall pretty good, and it's I had fun.
That's about. I think I'm about where you are, Brett. I'll put it this way: my initial reactions on finishing the campaign was just kind of like mild confusion.
Yes.
Like I want to make it clear, it wasn't overly negative or anything. It wasn't overly positive. There were some moments during the campaign where I was like, oh man, this is really, really cool. And then there were like 2 boss fights where I was just like, this is incredibly awful. Part of that was I was playing on a higher difficulty than normal, and this game does not feel balanced around heroic like past Halo games have. It feels balanced around normal. It's not a huge issue, but yeah.
And to speak to that a little bit, I've played through the game almost twice. I was literally playing it like the last few minutes before we hit the record button.
Nice.
I played the first time through on normal, which is what I usually do with Halo campaigns, and then when I heard that like heroic, the difficulty for heroic was a little bit off, I decided to go through. Right, I decided to go through and play again. I was like, oh my god, I hate this. I don't. I was not a fan. And I think I've said this before, but the biggest thing that I didn't like, and we can talk about like damage sponge, enemies as well. But for me, the most annoying thing is as soon as you hit the heroic or the legendary option, you also invite Murphy's Law into the
yes,
campaign.
100%.
Anything,
very much so.
Anything that can happen will happen, and it will ruin your day.
If you have my luck, you will get 3-shot by a single jackal sniper for 5 times until you eventually die and can get out, and it doesn't happen again.
And I'm not even talking about direct damage from enemies. I'm talking about anything that will explode will fly right in your face before exploding.
Yeah. If there's a wall like 4 feet to your right when you have a fusion coil in your hand and you throw it, it will somehow clip it and you will die from the stupidest thing that could possibly happen.
The checkpoints can be a little uneven for high difficulty too.
Yes.
Where it feels like sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're really bad.
For because I don't think any of us play Halo this way, where immediately it's like, oh, I'm gonna do legendary and I'm just grind it out, because there's just a certain level of like that is a kind of more hardcore type of Halo campaign campaign play where you just like get all like you do like lasso runs and stuff. I've like that's that's like fun to do and try and fail for me because I've never really been good at it. But that's not how the game's designed. That's not how I've ever really played Halo because heroic in this game feels like the way that you have to play legendary in the other games where sometimes you just have to cheese everything and you have to be super
Yeah.
careful with it. You can't do the thing that you could do in heroic and normal in this game's case where you can actually like be Master Chief and walk into a room and take a couple hits and like take a bunch of guys out. You cannot do that on heroic in this game. If
You
you
have to use
like
cover.
that,
Yeah.
You got to be safe. You got to be super safe.
if you like that legendary kind of playthrough where you're gonna spend like an hour on a room and then go to the next room and have to spend another hour on that room, and I'm exaggerating here because I imagine it's even worse on legendary. I didn't spend an hour on a room unless
I
there's certain
never
circumstances.
want
We'll
to
talk
play
about that.
legendary ever.
It's this game made me certain parts of it were frustrating enough where I just kind of don't ever want to really play it again because I go, oh, do I want to play that? And I think of that encounter and I go, no, not really. I'll go play something else that I have fun
Mhm.
with. But if you
Yeah.
like legendary stuff, you will probably enjoy this campaign.
But I'll say I
I
think
will say too.
Oh, go ahead. What?
I will say too. Like I said, my first playthrough was on normal, as I usually do for Halo games and for most games in general. And I actually really liked the normal difficulty. Like for me, it's that perfect balance of like, okay, I get hit and like my shield goes down and I'm about to die, but I'm able to like kind of recover and get
Yeah.
back to it without
Yeah.
dying constantly. And I feel like normal's pretty well tuned. I really enjoyed my time much more on normal.
Because a lot of the problems, a bunch of enemies and bosses will have 1 or 2 shot kills on you on heroic, and they also have incredibly large health pools. So you're
Yeah.
sitting there chipping away at a boss fight for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes in some cases where it's just not fun. One or two moments where it's just like a boss that has so much health and does so much damage if you're in its line of sight that you're just like, okay, I need to play in a very different way. And I think that is one major stopping point. I think the other major stopping point for past Halo players on if you're going to enjoy this is the structure of the game. So obviously this is a semi-open world game. I don't feel like it's justified calling it fully open world because the campaign itself is not. Right, the campaign itself has like 2 missions that are in the open world. The rest are their own missions and structures and more familiar Halo type missions, which to me felt pretty good. All those missions, I had a nice flow going through them. Past like the halfway mark, I was like, okay, I feel like I can finish this in an afternoon and have like a fun run through where I'm not stopping.
There is a problem with the main story missions, though, is that because they're kind of sectioned off from the open world and they all take place in Forerunner structures, they all start to look the same visually.
A little bit, yeah.
Which is very disappointing.
Yep.
And it sucks too because I feel like the visual design for Forerunner just stuff in general is awesome. I
think it's the best it's ever been in this game.
Yeah, it's great.
I had a moment where I turned on a flashlight against the Forerunner like glass and you can see all the dust and scuff marks reflecting. It was great. Like it's super atmospheric.
The first time you saw those tablets that had like alien DNA on it or whatever, and they were like kind of floating through in the first couple of missions. What are they called? Silex? Silexes?
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Super cool visually. Super freaking cool to look at.
Yeah, lots of cool visuals.
But you start seeing it over and over again, and
Same thing
all the
open
areas
world,
are well designed.
Because the open world is all one tile set basically. It's all foresty gray blocks.
Yeah.
Which like it looks good, but it's super samey. There's very little point to exploring.
I have this written down, and because this is the furthest I'll probably get to mentioning specifics without obviously going into any real spoilers, is because people, when this game was coming out, people are like, "Oh, this is gonna feel just like Halo 1, just like Halo 1." It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Halo 1 is a game that came out in like 2001. It's a hallway shooter, and sometimes the hallways are big
Really
and
big.
a circle. It's like there's one mission in the whole game where you can choose what you want to do in what order, and there's another mission that's just a really big island. Those are great. I love the Halo 1 campaign. It's a great fun campaign, and I think it holds up really well. But Halo 1, a game that came out all the way back when, and I know we're taking into account different like graphical fidelity levels and time it takes to make a game, but still, if you're just looking at what the game has, Halo 1 has swamp, snow, canyon, desert, Covenant ship, human ship, Forerunner structure, destroyed human ship, destroyed Covenant ship, and nighttime versions of practically all of those, and all in their own different missions. Every mission is sometimes you go into Forerunner hallways for a while, but even those are like different enough where I'm in this mission, the hallways look like this.
Or you get out of
It's
them quick enough that it doesn't matter.
exactly. There's the whole campaign is variety. That's why people love it, because it's not just it tricks you into thinking that it's not just a hallway shooter when it's just a very good hallway shooter. And this game, you know, the open world is definitely open and it is world, but it's like I don't know, it's like you're looking at the Windows XP background and it's just
Mhm.
like a green field and that's it. There's really
The
no
most
variety.
interesting
Yeah.
it gets is when there's like ruined, maybe like a pelican or a condor or something, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
something different. Or when you find a cave somewhere and you get kind of
Mhm.
excited and then you realize there's nothing in the cave. But you get kind of excited because it's like, okay, that's something off the beaten path that isn't clearly laid out to me on the map. And the other thing, and they showed this off in their original reveal video, their original reveal trailer. They didn't have this much, and I thought it was going to be incorporated much more into the open world. One of the biggest missed opportunities is like wildlife that like goes crazy and starts
Yes.
attacking
Yeah.
everyone, like some sort of like wildlife faction, because that's something I've always wanted. They had it for 1 second.
Well, they
in
tease
Halo
it
Reach
in the game too. Like there's a couple of teasers early on that like the ring has some old creatures and whatnot to repopulate after the flood, right? It's a
Mhm.
plot point from past Halo games, and so I'm like, oh, we're gonna see some cool creatures, right? No, nothing.
No.
Which is like it's not a huge issue because there is a lot of enemy variety within the enemies we have. It doesn't feel like it's actively missing enemy types, but it stands out as being strange when this open world is a big selling point of the game.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Well,
part of the emptiness of the open world, I
and
think.
again, they showed a lot of stuff in that reveal trailer that just isn't here. They had the like herds of rhinos and stuff. They had like this creepy like
Yeah.
underwater like octopus fish thing, which looked really cool.
You can tell
And it's
this
just
game like started and stopped development multiple times,
Yeah,
which is
definitely.
and
very
also
clear.
it's not like they don't have the assets for different biomes. Some of the multiplayer maps is just a straight up desert. You
Yeah.
have you have the art assets for that.
What I
You
wonder is if
couldn't
maybe they didn't have enough enemies to really justify it. Like they felt like they needed different enemy factions for the different biomes, which I understand. But at the same time, I would have rather had some more visual variance.
I think ultimately it boils down to what I at least think the reason behind it is that when you buckle down and you decide that you are going to do an open world game, that changes the way that you develop a Halo game and design a Halo game.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to, at least for me, because I know we feel slightly different on this particularly, but at least for me, this is going to come up multiple times where it's just if this wasn't an if this wasn't like a pretty good Halo game with just like an open world tumor stuck to the side of it, it would be so much better because
Feels
there's
unfocused.
just no reason. There's no reason for the open world to be there because it pulls away from the story. It pulls away from what you're supposed to be doing, and there's really nothing there that's like actually tactile, meaningful content, other than like you get to spend some time with Marines, I guess, and you get to explore the thing that looks the same as the other thing, and do
And
the
none of
same
that
thing
is
that you
like
did at the
not
other thing.
fun, but it feels like it's very clear that the story needed more development time.
Yes,
And it feels like the effort that was put into that open world might have been better served improving the
Exactly.
story. And I think one of the arguments against that is like, oh, you have the whole upgrade system where you can upgrade your grappling hook, upgrade your drop wall. Just do that at specific points in the story.
Yeah,
D&D solved this
really that
issue
simple.
a long time ago. You can use regular XP or you can use milestone and just update it at
I
plot points.
Yeah.
I think the smarter move would have been, because I do think there are, and I'm sure we'll go into it at some point, but I think there are certain things that are gained from having a much wider like play area than in other Halo games.
But it
I
feels like
think
they
it's
didn't take
too big
advantage of
because
it.
it is. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. As I feel like that the best sort of middle ground between traditional, like more linear Halo missions and this open world is what we had. And I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say anything in terms of spoilers, but there's a section of the game. It's what they showed off in the first gameplay demo. That entire section of the game where you're taking out that AA gun is its own separate little island area. and it's way more interesting than the other
Yeah.
areas because it has
Yeah.
tons of UNSC ruins everywhere. It's a more focused, more interesting
Felt very
looking
developed,
location.
right? It got the
Yeah,
attention it needed.
and I feel like that should have been how they play. It's like, okay, here's like the next like maybe chapter in the story, and that chapter is going to occupy one smaller but way more dense, openish area
Yeah.
that has multiple objectives. It has all the fobs and stuff that you would want to do in it, but it's way more focused, and we can make it much more interesting. And that's also where the
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
biomes come in. I think that is the play in the future rather than one
Yeah, for sure.
giant.
Because this game is
I-
definitely going to have follow-ups. I think that's an important note.
Yeah.
No spoilers, but
It's
that
pretty
is
obvious.
100% something that's going to be happening.
Yeah.
If they
You
leave it
can-
as is, I think there's going to be a lot of pissed off Halo fans.
A lot of confusion.
You can
Lot of
those of you
confusion.
watching the video can read what's on Ryan's board behind him, and that should be enough.
May not let me pan the camera
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yep.
Finish the fight.
Yeah.
I can't. It's
I
not in the
can't.
game.
That's all we'll say for now.
So yeah, we'll get into that in the spoiler section. I do want to mention for now, it's move on from the regular campaign because I want to talk about the gameplay and other non-spoiler stuff. But first, let's talk about this campaign. At $60, would you have considered this worth it? Not on Game Pass.
No.
So if you had just bought it for $60, I think I would have been a little disappointed, especially having just played Far Cry 6, which is not even the best Far Cry game by a long shot, but it is a much better example of open world. So I think if you're paying $60 for this, maybe wait for a sale would be my recommendation, but that's going to differ for all of us. So
Personally speaking, I understand if most people want to wait for a sale, and I understand the argument that we're now paying $60 for a Halo game that just has the campaign and not for because all that other stuff is free. So I get that argument where we're paying for
Yeah.
less Halo now.
you're paying
I get
more.
that.
You're paying the same amount of money for less stuff, right?
Yes,
that you're getting.
and I understand that entirely. For me, I had a lot of fun to the point because we've said this before. It's like it's not about the amount of hours; it's how much fun you had in those hours, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm willing to spend like a lot of money on a game that maybe doesn't have the longest campaign, but if that's a good amount of like a really enjoyable amount of time that I spent, that I'm not going to care. Personally, I enjoyed myself enough within the I want to say like 12, 13 hours that I played that for me, I personally wouldn't be disappointed because I think there was a lot of moments that I really, really loved, especially in that first playthrough, that it's worth it to me. But definitely feel like
I
I'm
get a
in
feeling
a
it
small
depends
majority
heavily on what your like value to gaming ratio is, right? Like if you
Yeah.
heavily value because a couple of the set pieces in this game are really, really good, right? The
Mhm.
whole like the opening two missions are super fun,
Yeah.
and like bits of the final missions are also very fun. So I think there's lots
and
of Halo.
there's
fun
a
to be
lot
had.
of set pieces that I made myself in the open world just by doing really stupid stuff.
And
And
I
I
wonder
really,
why
really enjoyed that.
how much of this would have been different if I'd started on normal, right? Because I think that's
I really
part of it.
enjoyed
Is
my time on normal. That's the thing.
having
is that
because I swapped midway through the campaign from heroic to normal. After there was a particularly rough boss on heroic that I was just like, okay, I
We'll talk about
do
it.
not want to risk this happening again and just having so little fun. So I swapped to normal. After that, great time until the end. So I wonder
smart
how much that played into it.
I found and this kind of goes into like the Marines too.
Yeah.
I found so much enjoyment, and I keep talking about this. I found so much enjoyment going to a forward operating base, calling down a Razorback, equipping all my guys with a bunch of cool guns, and then just heading out to an objective somewhere, whether it's like side content or a main mission. I found so much enjoyment in doing it. It never got old for me, especially during my first playthrough. Second playthrough, I was rushing a little bit because I wanted to try and finish it before this discussion, and I couldn't get there, unfortunately. But my first playthrough, I was like taking my time, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give you the rocket launcher. I'm gonna give you like a sniper rifle. I'm gonna give this guy this thing, and now I've got this like fully loaded up squad, and we're gonna go like attack this fortress or something. And it was great, and I loved that. And it again never got old for me.
Yeah. I have one specific call out I want to make here for the campaign that I really disliked. This very minor thing. But if you give me a menu with upgrades, and you have like 4 really cool abilities with some really cool upgrades, and then you have shield strength, just up my shield strength by 15% every time I put a point in, I am never, ever going to put a point into shield strength. And I think that's my one like major complaint about that tree is if you put your points into shield strength, you're missing out on all the super fun stuff that happens when you upgrade your other abilities.
I did.
I did
didn't
too.
feel like it make any difference. It made no difference on heroic.
I disagree. On normal, you can feel the difference. At least I did.
Well, because I think the problem is,
and I was
HP relies on breakpoints, right? And in heroic, most things kill you in 2 to 3 hits. So the 15% shield is not going to prevent them from killing you in 2 to 3 hits.
No.
In normal, it's a little bit different. So
I felt it on normal, so it was it felt like an upgrade that was meaningful to me. There were definitely things that I prioritized.
You had
over
more
it.
Spartan cores than I think Brett or I did when we finished the game.
Oh no,
because I did not upgrade most
on my
stuff.
on my first playthrough. I think I had almost everything completely leveled up by the end of the game, like before my last mission. Because there were times that I went out just looking for like Spartan cores, like especially if you can get yourself like a banshee or a wasp. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna spend the next like however like 20 minutes or something just doing upgrades.
Yeah.
And those flying vehicles makes it a lot easier to do that.
So. Okay. So on that note, oh, Brett, you have one closing statement.
I do want to say I did not state my opinion, and I do happen to have a short excerpt written out that I would like to read. And I will also say this is just what I think, and just because I'm the person reading actual like English writing and not people blabbering like we have been. It doesn't mean I'm right. It's just I'm reading it because it's what I want to say. Okay, this is $60. It does not include the multiplayer that is free, and the things that you do get for the multiplayer in the campaign are some okay-looking cosmetics that you can't even put on every armor set. This game is not worth $60. Do not buy it. I would not recommend it at full price. Halo ODST was $40, I believe, at launch, and Infinite deserves to be, I think, even less expensive than that. If you have Game Pass and want to give it a try, obviously that's the best case scenario, which is, I think, the way that we all did it. But I would really only stoop to buying the campaign at like $40 maximum, probably closer to $30. I did not feel like I got a $60 experience. In a world where you can get games like Ghost of Tsushima, Nier Replicant and Automata, Master Chief Collection, Elden Ring, and you know what? I'm even going to go here in a world where you can buy Cyberpunk, which has 100 times the content for half the price right now because it's on sale as the recording of this podcast. There's simply no reason to buy only the campaign for Halo Infinite unless you are a super fan or you needed to play it for your podcast.
Yeah, and
that is my thought process.
To my second thing, which you've thankfully answered already, Brett. Good segue. With Game Pass, should people download this game and try it? I think 100% yes, right? There's
absolutely
tons of fun to be had here with Game Pass. It's a short campaign. You can finish it in like 2 days if you want to, especially if you're not focusing on the open world. And it's a really, really high-quality shooter. I think that's the core point, is the gameplay of Halo Infinite feels rock solid for most of the campaign.
I did want to bring that up, and I feel like it also transitions us into multiplayer when we get there. But when you're actually... right, but also it does relate to the campaign as well, in that if like open world stuff, you can say that it like breaks pacing, which it totally does. It distracts from the story. There's all these. Once you're in an encounter with a group of banished, it is amazing. It is so much fun. The amount of freedom that you're offered in the sandbox, how freaking intelligent, even on normal, the AI can be at times, and how they're trying to surround you and legitimately trying to corner you. All of the hilarious voice lines from both the Covenant and your like fellow Marines.
The music
adds so much. I love the score to this so much. I think they did a great job.
Yeah.
All the weapons feel great and like really good punchy sound.
Notably
design
in the
that
campaign.
Strikes...
In the campaign, all the weapons feel good.
Which is something I would want to mention, because we had talked about weapon balancing in multiplayer before. Everyone hates the pulse carbine. Basically, if you're going up against an enemy player in the multiplayer and they have a pulse carbine, it is an instant win almost no matter what weapon you have. It doesn't matter. That being said, the pulse carbine in campaign is really
So much
good.
better.
So
It's
is the
really
Ravager.
good.
The Ravager
The
is
Ravager is
great.
fun to
Ravager?
use.
Best weapon to take out hunters, in my opinion. Because like the hunters, it's very difficult to like bait them into using their melee attack, right? So the Ravager is a really, really good option of just like, okay, I'm going to deal a bunch of AoE damage. And I tested it today on heroic. I was fighting 2 hunters, nothing but 2 hunters. I had a fully powered up Ravager. It gives you exactly enough ammo if you fully charge every single shot to take out 2 hunters,
Nice.
which is pretty good. Which is
That's
pretty
Halo
good.
math. That's a sign of Halo math. One of the few times that Halo math shows up in the entire game, I would dare say, but that's Halo math.
In terms of just combat in the campaign, I think it may be the best it's ever been, in my opinion.
Very tight. Yeah.
It feels
Especially
great, and
the grappling hook, because I was so worried. You can go back and watch our reactions to the Microsoft E3 conference where they show the grappling hook, and I specifically was the one who was like, I am super worried this game's going to turn into grappling hook the game, because that's what happens to nearly every shooter that has a grappling hook. It didn't. Thankfully, they balanced the grappling hook near perfectly, both in multiplayer and in single player. Feels great.
And I've also heard from a lot of people, it's like, oh, all I used was the grappling hook. I didn't use the other armor abilities. At least on normal, I used a lot of the other ones.
So
like
did I.
I was like, okay, if I'm going into an encounter, bam, okay, what's it called? The motion tracker going down, and then it's like if I want to protect a bunch of Marines, boom, throw out the drop wall and stuff like that. If I'm fighting an enemy that's like charging at me or is using like an energy sword or a grav hammer, I use thruster to like back away, but
The only
not
thing
too
I'll say
much
about
where
the
I can't get
thruster,
some good shots on them.
feels like you get that way later in the game than you should.
Agreed.
Right? That feels like an ability you should have had early on, especially because it feels pretty lackluster without the upgrades to it. But once you get the upgrades, like you can get a thing that makes it when you thrust, you turn invisible. So you use your thruster and then you get invisibility for 4 seconds to run around. It's so cool, right? Those little ability changes are the things that I think make the progression really satisfying. When
I
it's working,
use the drop.
so.
I use the drop wall a lot. If you upgrade the drop wall, it becomes this massive freaking thing that's way bigger than compared in the multiplayer, and it also can take a lot more damage. It's really, really.
It also
good.
becomes, if you've played Warframe, it becomes Volt's shield, where if you throw it down and shoot bullets through it, they become electrified and deal shock damage.
That's cool.
It's really cool.
That's cool.
And
There's
I want
some
to
fun things
point
like
out again, enemy AI has been great. One of the biggest
Except for the bosses.
One of the and we'll get there. One of the biggest downgrades since moving from Bungie to 343. As much as I mostly like 343's campaigns, the AI has always suffered, and they've never been able to get back to that same level of like intelligence that we had in previous Halo games. They felt very downgraded. They felt very downgraded by comparison. Here, I think they're back in full force. Like I think honestly they did such.
Because what I really liked, you can get enemies will like run away more often if you are clearing things quickly. Stuff like that feels really good. Or they'll start running. They're gonna turn around and start shooting you again at some point. But you have the just the fun things that are like little touches of character to the enemies that really help.
I'm gonna keep pointing it out every time we talk about the campaign. Brutes can throw suicide grunts at you, and it's simultaneously
it's amazing.
the most hilarious thing, but also terrifying.
Because they scream too.
Yeah.
So I do need to move us on from the regular campaign discussion because we have other things to talk about. We got to get to multiplayer, and we're gonna spend the next probably 15-20 minutes on multiplayer because I think there's a lot to say about it. We're gonna put the caveat here: big team battle was broke for a long time.
Yes,
it wasn't broke when the game launched. It broke like a month after it launched, and was broken until about 3 weeks ago. So
maybe not even. I'm not even sure.
It's fixed now. I've been able to play a few rounds of it, and it's great fun when it works.
I've been playing a bunch of it recently.
Have they brought the player count back up?
No.
Still hasn't happened. All right. So yeah, there's some caveats with the multiplayer not 100% working correctly, which is a shame because when it's firing on all cylinders, it's very fun. But it's been a little shaky so far. But it's free, so even if you don't have Game Pass, you should try the multiplayer and make your own opinions. Everything we're going to say you might disagree with, and that's totally valid. So, that said, let's get into multiplayer talk, because this is probably going to be, I think, one of the things that differs the most between us. Who wants to start?
I don't know
Want to
where
start?
to start.
All right.
Give me a sec.
Let me give you. I'm gonna give us some categories here. Let's start with the map design.
Give me a subtopic.
I think the map design is a really easy starting point because there's a few major differentiating factors here for how 343 has designed these maps compared to the old Bungie maps that you can play in the MCC. And I think that, especially in big team battle, shows because there's a big problem with the big team battle maps and that they're all very well designed, but they don't feel designed for vehicles. And that's like the big breaking point for me is vehicles have always been the crux of big team battle, right? You get the Warthog with your buds, you roll around and start blasting everyone to shreds in these big open areas, right? None of the big team battle maps have open areas.
Nope.
None of them. They're all like these lanes, very like MOBA style lanes, which works well for infantry, does not work well for vehicles.
The only map that has like legitimate like open-ended areas for vehicles is Behemoth, which is a 4v4 map.
Yeah.
It's the one desert map that we have, and it's got this giant ring that goes around the map, and it's legitimately
It feels
really
great
fun
because you can get like
vehicles.
strafing Warthog battles around the ring, which are very fun.
It feels like the most Bungie map in the entire lineup.
It feels like a Halo 3 map.
It
Like,
kind of feels like, I think the way I'd put it is most of the maps here feel slightly over-designed, and that they were a little too concerned that they would feel empty if there weren't things everywhere. And I think that is just categorically not going to be a problem with Halo.
I think it's much less of an issue in like quick play 4v4 maps where there's no vehicles to begin with anyway. That is totally fine. Big team battle, you need your big, wide open spaces, you need plenty of air, room in the air for your air vehicles and stuff like that. And we don't have that yet.
It also kind of feels like a lot of the maps are lacking identity in a way that, especially in like verticality, where in MCC you can go back and play. There's the Reach map that is like on a Corvette in space with the like dome at the top that you can fly out of and float a little bit, and then come back down. Super cool. There's the space map that has like the side area that goes into space. It's a hangar, very fun. Yeah. It feels like there's the business building where there's like vertical structures and bridges going across. There's a lot more like variety in terms of the kinds of locations you get, both visually and in terms of their design. Maybe Halo Infinite will get there, right? Because they've said they're going to support this game for a long time. But as of right now, that the variety feels lacking. I don't want to say the maps that we have are bad, because they're not. But they are often less interesting when compared as a whole to other Halo games.
And there's fewer than 10. Right? That's
Yep.
counting all of them.
But that is almost on par with a lot of the Halo games.
But at least with other Halo games, like you had in every one of the last few until this one, you had Forge to make your own. We don't have Forge, and we just have maybe season 2, maybe season 3, and it's like, how long are this? Okay. And you don't have smaller versions of the big team battle maps, and you don't have bigger versions of the Slayer maps, which is just super easy. Like, you could see it as padding.
Launch site would be super cool if it was expanded a little bit into a big
launch
team map.
site and the desert map.
Behemoth.
Like if Behemoth, both of those honestly could just be straight up, like, it would be chaotic, but I'd just like to see them be in big team battle anyway, because sometimes it feels a little empty. It's and I do want to say also, because this is part of the map design. And this is a problem that I've realized, because ever since they started doing it in Halo 4 with the weapons dropping from the sky or whatever, instead of just having like power weapon spawns on all the map, it's like, why doesn't this feel right? It's like, I can still get the power weapons and I can get whichever ones I want. Why doesn't this feel right? And it's because, in this corner in this map in Halo Reach, the rocket launcher spawns there at the waterfall. This is where the sniper rifle spawned. This is the map that has the sniper rifle spawn over here.
Yep.
And in Halo Infinite, it's like none of the maps have
There's
identity.
There's going to be like
because
power weapon in this general vicinity.
And sometimes it's like, I have a challenge that requires this gun, or I like using this gun, and then I go up to the spawn, and then the disruptor's there, and I go, oh, well, that means the disruptor's there for all of the spawns of this gun on this game, and I have to wait till it's over.
If there's a map that I played on previously that has the battle rifle right there, I want that battle rifle to be there every single time.
Especially because the commando and the battle rifle are in the same class of spawns, and the two teams can have different weapon spawns.
Yes.
So you might have
If you
one
have
team
one
with a bunch of
team-
commandos and one team with a bunch of battle rifles, and if you've played the game, you know those two weapons are not balanced against each other.
No,
And arguably, I
the
say
commando
even
sucks.
worse. The vehicles are like that too, where
Mhm.
multiple times one team has gotten a Scorpion or Wraith, and we got a Mongoose. Not even a Gun Goose. A Mongoose to combat a main battle tank that could blow the Mongoose up in one hit.
But Brett,
And I just
you
don't
could go pick
understand
up
how
a
that
shock
made it to the
rifle
game.
and completely eliminate any vehicle in the game in like one
No,
shot.
I can't because some idiot has it already because he needed to do it to complete a challenge and he just wasted all the ammo on some guy that he missed all the shots on. So I can't do that actually. So whoops.
And I think what
Yeah.
this discussion shows is that we all want to really like the multiplayer, but there's just a couple of barriers that make it less enjoyable than it could be.
You two really want to like the multiplayer.
Well, I do like it, but I could like it a lot more if they changed these small things, right? Like, I want to make it very clear this multiplayer is not bad. It is nowhere near the state of like Battlefield 2042, nowhere near any of the other shooters that have launched this year in terms of how broken it is. Like, it works most of the time. It's fun. The gunplay's very, very good. Most of the weapons are fine. There's a couple that are stinkers, but most of them are good in multiplayer.
The sandbox from the campaign carries over into the multiplayer.
Absolutely.
For the most part, yeah.
Fusion coils
It's-
are still
and-
super fun.
Yeah.
And this is one thing, it's because I've kept playing this game consistently. Like, I think ever since it came out, with like some exceptions and some, chunks of time of my life, I've been playing consistently every single day, right? And the reason there's a lack of maps, I don't like how weapon spawns work. There's still a lot of bugs. Big team battle was only fixed recently. The reason I keep playing, or one of the big reasons I keep playing, I should say, is that the sandbox is so incredibly flexible that I'm still discovering new things and trying new things all the time. And I see something in like a video, I'm like, that looks so cool, and then I hop over to multiplayer and I want to try that. And because it's so flexible that even though I've played on Fracture for the 10th time in a row today, I don't care because, well, I mostly don't care because I mostly don't care.
It still bothers
because
you a little
there's-
bit, but it's not ruining the
It doesn't bother
experience for
me.
you.
Yeah,
It's
you gotta
not
think
ruining
that.
it because the sandbox is so flexible, and 10 rounds on Fracture in a row can go completely differently from one or another, depending on the people you're playing with and the tools that they're giving you, because it's so flexible and there's so many things you could do with it.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you guys about this, what I've been doing now for stockpile, right, is if you're on Fracture and you're like at the very bottom and your base is up on that cliff, right, you just throw the power seed up in the air, use the repulsor, and it sends it flying over the cliff, like right into your base, so that someone can pick it up and put it in. Or you throw it up and then someone uses a grapple shot to pull it out of midair if you can't make the the toss the full way. Just so many cool, like, out of the box, like, did the developers even think of this type of stuff that keeps me playing still to this day after 11 hours, 4 days, and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'm glad
11
that
days and 4
was-
hours? Is that what you meant, Wyatt?
what did I say?
4 days,
11
11
hours,
hours.
4 days.
Oh, the 11 days.
Oh God. Well, but
Wow.
I'm glad that is your justification, and you're not, because I know you're not, but you're not one of the people that's just like, oh well, they're gonna add more and they're gonna do this, and because here's the thing, it's been pretty much exactly 3 months to the release date of the multiplayer. We're kind of in the beta as the release date because let's be honest, nothing has changed. There's not a roadmap for the game. We don't know when new maps are getting added. We don't know if and when new weapons are getting added.
We don't know
We
if we're
know
gonna get
that new events are
modes.
going to happen. No, we don't know when new modes
Or
are happening.
old modes coming
I
back.
know-
Like,
And I know we've had this discussion before, Wyatt. So I'm actively predicting the different outcomes of this conversation as it's happening. I know what you're going to say. I know you're going to say,
What did you think I was
but-
going to say? I'm
because I would rather, you're going to say, I would rather for 343 wait until they have something to
that is not what I
show.
was going to say.
But that you did say that.
I did say
So
that
after
at one
you
point.
after you say what you're going to say, I will respond to the imaginary thing that you said in the past but did not say right now. That is okay. Because
What I was going to say is my stance on this is I have no doubt that they are going to update it with content, modes, maps, maybe new weapons or whatever, new cosmetics. No doubt they're going to do that in the future.
because look at
does
Master Chief
not-
Collection, right?
It does not. Excuse me.
I'm reinforcing your point, Wyatt. I'm trying to help you out here.
I know. I'm sorry. It does not excuse the state that the game was launched in and what it was left in before break. And
Again,
it
see
also
Master
doesn't
Chief Collection.
excuse. It doesn't excuse. Thank you. It doesn't excuse the current state of customization right now, which even as someone who has basically admitted I love this multiplayer is trash, garbage, dumpster fire, poo poo. It needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't excuse the just complete lack of information on what we're getting. I'm sure it's going to be updated in the future. That doesn't make it okay right now.
Yep.
Well, why you'll be happy and possibly even terrified to know that you actually responded to your imaginary self in the same way that I was. The only thing that I really have to add on top of that is because we don't have any concrete dates, and like I said or whatever, which is a legitimate thing. It's like I would rather wait until they had something ready to show instead of like No Man's Skying themselves, or honestly, quite frankly, Halo Infiniting
Or
themselves,
cyberpunking themselves.
cyberpunking, yeah.
They got cyberpunked.
Yeah. At the same time, it's like in order to have like, oh, I'm more satisfied with this situation because they waited until they had something ready to show me. In order for that to be satisfying, they have to actually friggin' show you something, and they haven't shown us anything. So it doesn't. If they're waiting until they're ready, they haven't been ready for a very long time.
Especially because Big Team Battle was broken for months.
Yes.
Like 2 full months.
Not only that, we got several patches that were an attempt to fix it, and they just
did nothing.
Didn't work, which is something that I've never seen before.
It still has a lower play cap.
How do you release a patch to fix something and it doesn't fix it? Why even bother releasing it?
I have next to the content thing on my notes. I have next to content, it says what content, because okay, they've added like a bunch of different shiny armors or whatever. Most of them you have to get from paying money, and then most of them you have to get from paying even more money. But they've slightly reduced the amount of money that you have to pay for them. Instead of being a third of the price of a full price game, to being
like the Cyberpunk ones are off center with the like effects, and they've said they're not going to be able to fix that until the season 2 launches.
Yeah, there's
small things like that are super weird.
George's armor doesn't have normal maps on it, which if you know what 3D modeling is, that's like, what? How does that means the textures are going on wrong? That is something that you get like an F for in your project in college when the normal maps are on wrong, and this isn't a game that you can spend money on. It's meaningful content to me is fixing the problems, adding the things that are in the older games, and making the game more fun to play. The armor that they add, the events that they have, did not make the game more fun to play. They switched it up for a little bit and made it fresh for a little bit, but they're not altering the experience in a positive way.
They're also like horribly paced, right? Fracture Tenrai, I cared about it for 1 week, completely over it. At this point, I don't care if I do a single other match to get anything else. Because I'm like, it's spread out over like 5 months. Like, what is this event?
They're also
structure?
completely unclear about when they come out. I mean, they list what weeks there are, but then we got to that last week, and I was like, oh, okay, I missed some things in like the battle pass to finish it up. That's kind of a shame. And I was talking to a friend about it. He's like, oh no, there's going to be more. I was like, what are you talking about? They didn't even list it anywhere in the game. Like, oh yeah, there's going to be like 2 more weeks in like the next 6 months.
The game's also been repeatedly incorrect in the game about how you advance the event passes. Like, it is legitimately told you in one event where all you had to do was play a match in a game mode. Like once in like there was like a 10-day period, you had to play like 5 matches in a specific game mode once a day to do it. Very easy event, except the thing that told you how to progress in the event said you have to complete challenges, which was not true at all, and very confusing. So it's lots of little things like that it feels like it's so obvious that there is not enough people there experienced with live service and how to handle the launch of a Halo multiplayer game, that it really feels like they just needed some time to sort it out, right? Especially because they keep saying the UI is a problem in terms of like how they can adjust armor cores and whatnot. And I'm like, how? Like, how How is the UI? Look, and I'm saying this from the point to remember the reason we do this podcast is because all of us have experienced game development in some way, right?
Yes, in some way,
We're all
shape, or
either
form.
actively in the industry, have been in the industry a little bit. We went to college for game-related stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I have myself designed the UI on a shipped game, and our core thing when designing that UI was to make sure it was expandable.
Yeah.
Core thing. Like, it bonkers my mind in that, like, 5-person team. We figured
Especially
that out.
for a live service game, having things that aren't expandable in the future is insanity.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be, you're 343 Industries. Your one goal in life is to make Halo games. And you have said many times, like, this game is coming out and this is the game we're going to be supporting for a very long time. Because I think we're not going to see like a full sequel for a long time. I think we're going to see add-on content for multiplayer, for single player,
Expansions,
for whatever.
something like that.
It is a live service game. So the fact that you can't add on top of what you've already done is insanity.
Mind-boggling.
Get there.
And but why? I'm getting deja vu. We've experienced this before. Where have we seen this before, Wyatt?
What's that smell?
This terrible taste in my mouth. It's Battlefield 5. Oh God!
No.
The worst live service game. It killed Wyatt. He's dead. And I was just going to say before this last conversation happened that if 343 doesn't have it in their like actual capability to add the things that I mentioned before being meaningful content to the multiplayer within, I'm gonna give them a month. If they can't add at least one map to the game or fix one of these glaring issues
or a
with the
mode
game,
or something that shows they're making progress.
In a month, I'm going to put this on the same filing cabinet, same shelf as Battlefield 5 as most like flatline live service where it's like, yeah, there's things in it, but who cares? It's like, God, it was like free, and I like, I wish I paid for it. I wish I paid for it.
I'm gonna push back a tiny bit. This game's live service elements may be garbage, but at least they were able to get their first season out on time, and they also had a scoreboard out on time.
They did have a scoreboard.
Have to delay basic features.
And
I'm gonna push back and say 2042 is the most flatline live service.
Well, 2042 didn't flatline. It immediately stood up, got shot, and then just vanished. It is not even. There was never a heart there.
It was shot in the head and then disconnected from the server.
Completely, yeah. Which I like. One more thing, because I have a feeling that we're getting, because I know Ryan said
we need to start moving on
for a long time. But I do, because we haven't talked about this, and it's just something that I thought about recently. And this is two birds with one stone, because we have this part we did talk about. But we have the weekly ultimate challenge rewards, where you do all your challenges in a week.
Completely forgot they existed.
Ultimate reward. You forget they exist because why would you call them ultimate if they suck? There's no reason to want to unlock almost any of that. There was like a couple cool visors and a sniper rifle skin that was like green and red, and it looked pretty cool.
And the grind for them can be super inconsistent, because you might be fine, right?
Yes.
You might have challenges that are totally fine, or you might have challenges that are going to take you 500 games to do, because they're just awful.
Yes.
Like, we haven't even mentioned the challenge system. Awful. Terrible design. Just really needs reworking.
And I want to say, from the perspective of someone that has maxed out the battle pass, right? I thought when I maxed out the battle pass, I was like, I don't have to deal with this garbage anymore. Thank God I can wait until next season, right? Here's the problem: if there's an event going on, and
gotta do it.
Those event challenges, no, it gets worse. And those event challenges are mixed in with your regular challenges. Sometimes the event challenges go away because they're all in the same list for God knows what reason.
What I really don't get, why do you just not get challenges?
So if you're someone like me who never wants to deal with it again until next season, 4 months from now or whatever, but there's an event going on, you're like, oh, that's a cool little hologram visor thing that I want. If you run out of the event challenges in your list, you got to go through all the other challenges, regular challenges, just to have them pop up on your list again. And you can't use challenge swaps to get rid of a regular one to bring an event one back. That's not how it works. You have to just go through it again after you grinded for God knows how long, so you didn't have to deal with this anymore.
Take the challenges and throw them into the ocean like they're a car
You don't need
battery
them.
or something.
You don't need
Get
it. What
rid
is
of
the
them.
point?
Gone.
You have a perfect way of gaining XP in your battle pass, and they're called medals, and they've been here since day one.
Yes.
That is I cannot think of a more perfect progression than like we are going to reward you for the cool things that you do in multiplayer because our sandbox promotes you to do cool
Exactly.
things. There is
Exactly.
nothing that I can think of that is a better way of rewarding the player for doing cool things in your awesome sandbox game.
And here's the part two. The part two why I bring this up because we've established the challenges in the weekly ultimate rewards absolutely are atrocious. Sometimes the weekly reward is I don't even know what it's called, like a banner,
An
and
emblem.
it's just like a little white. Well, sometimes it's 3 emblems that are the same thing in a row that you just put them on different places. But well, yeah. Sometimes it's just like a white picture of like literally a stick figure, and it's like what is this? Where do we put this? That's the thing you put in the background for when people inspect you in the pre and
Your
post
player
game
card
lobby.
or whatever it's
Wait a
called.
second.
There's
no
lobby.
pre or post game lobby. What?
We
not
solved
here!
this in Halo Reach so long ago, and they have not brought it back for a single game since then. Like Halo Reach showed off your Spartan and everything, right? Like it gives you even more incentive to spend money in a live service game like this because everyone can see your Spartan in the pre and post match lobby stuff. Nothing. So, all right, I want to refocus us a little bit onto. I think all of us would agree the multiplayer is still worth your time. Because most of the negative feedback is about the progression and the slow pace of updates. What's there already is good, and it's free, right? Go try it. You know, there's no harm in trying it. I think I got at least like a good 30 hours of entertainment out of the multiplayer with no issues.
Yeah, I played a ton.
It just really feels like I think the where I am at headspace wise now is I've written down that for Infinite's multiplayer to truly succeed to me, what I need it to do is to make me want to uninstall the Master Chief Collection, right? That is the signal that it has fully succeeded. Instead, the more I play Halo Infinite's multiplayer, the more I then want to go play Master Chief Collection multiplayer. It's not like I want to stop playing Halo Infinite, but it's more that I think it does not stand on its own 2 feet the way that it should, especially for a live service.
Yep.
And for me, I have uninstalled the Master Chief Collection not too long ago.
It's a big game. I don't blame you.
I first of all I needed the drive space, but also I like every single issue that we've brought up, I am in total agreement with. I am not like a fanboy of this game. I'm not in denial. It has a lot of issues, but I also can't deny the 11 days that I've put into it, and I can't deny how much I love playing it despite these issues. So for me, I love this multiplayer, and I'm probably going to be playing it like at least once or twice a day for a very long time. That being said, 343, get your shit together.
Please fix these things.
As someone who is now very invested and someone who loves this, I say this out of partial desperation and out of love. Fix this now.
Don't make you reinstall the Master Chief Collection.
Exactly, yeah.
Because what I want to mention is I went back and I played just a single round Master Chief Collection, a big team battle. It's on Avalanche. And it immediately, all the fun that I was not having in Halo Infinite's big team battle mode came rushing back. Because like I still think Halo Infinite's big team battle is very fun, but you just lack some of that core Halo energy that comes out of the classic maps that are very different, the big open spaces, like multiple pathways, and it just feels like we're missing that in a lot of the maps right now. So I think that is really the biggest issue, is just they really need to focus down on updating modes and maps. Like, why do we not have Infection? Why do we not have Griffball? Why do we not have Action Sack? At least on like a daily rotation or something, right? Like daily special mode. Something.
They gave us SWAT though. My favorite game mode.
I mean, plenty of people love SWAT. I'm not one of them, but plenty of people love SWAT.
That's a personal thing. That's a very personal thing. If you love SWAT, God bless. I can't stand it.
And I want to back up, Wyatt, what you were saying about how you got 11 days out of this, because I think we are kind of a nice microcosm of Halo players. All of us like Halo a lot. All of us have a history playing Halo games. And I think we're going to be a similar breakdown to the people that are picking this game up that have played Halo before and who's going to stick around. Because I think if you split your players, probably like half of them have never touched Halo. Because it's on Game Pass, It's on PC now. Probably half of them never touched Halo before. They're probably going to have a lot of fun for a while, but then back away. You then have the other half that has played a lot of Halo, and I think you're going to then see like a 3-2-1 split of players that get their fun out of Halo Infinite and go back to Master Chief Collection, players that just play the campaign, never really touch the multiplayer like they always do, or you have players like Wyatt that are really into the multiplayer just because there's nothing else to compete with it right now. There's no Halo game that is new to really, have any competition with Halo Infinite. So, yeah, I think it's a nice little microcosm. The thing that's a benefit for 343 is I don't think any of those players are leaving disappointed with what they got. They might be disappointed in the current state of the game, but
they don't have to review it. I think the only reason we're like voicing, we're even able to like, if we didn't have like this as a place to like come and discuss it, I don't think I would just kind of be like, yeah, whatever. But this other thing came out. I want to play this instead, and then like a couple months or a year or something, I'll go back to Halo, and I'll just leave it at that. But now it's like I'm like analyzing. I'm like thinking, why don't I like this? And I end up becoming more negative. Probably, but at the same time, also I think this goes for me and Ryan. Obviously, it doesn't matter for why because he's still playing it. But we haven't dropped this game forever at all. I think in a couple months, in a year or something.
I still play it like I play it like once a week, right? Like I'm not the daily person, but I'll play a couple matches once a week. I need to move us on to the actual spoiler because we've been about an hour. I think it's a good amount of time for going over this. I do think this is a game that might inevitably end up getting revisited on our podcast when
I can see
a bunch of updates come out and we have more to talk about with multiplayer, because I think right now we've said most of the things we've said about multiplayer on the podcast itself already.
We've talked about customization before.
We talked about customization.
Really it hasn't changed. Still terrible.
Still bad. There's plenty of people that have complained about it and are going to continue to complain about it. We're in that group. I'm sure we'll talk about it again on the podcast at some point. So the multiplayer is something we're not going to stop talking about. As of right now, though, we need to move on to our spoiler discussion, which means if you want to play this game and not get completely spoiled, please leave.
Bye.
True. Bye-bye.
Please leave. All right. So, with that, in 5 seconds, we're going to start talking about some major spoilers. Get out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, spoilers are on the table.
It's officially your fault now.
Yes.
Finish the fight. I can't do it because the game doesn't end.
No, it's like things are happening and then just.
Well, but Ryan, the game can't end. It's called Halo Infinite. There is no end.
All right, and that's the episode, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed. I am now the new host. We're done here. We're never talking about Halo ever again.
Okay, so I think out of necessity, this is mostly going to be a spoiler discussion. But before we do that, I think Brett and I need like a 5-minute vent about Hyperius and his stupid, dumbass brother.
Can I chime in with my normal playthrough at some point?
Yes. I'm finding the place that I wrote down the things about the bosses because
that's first. Because you guys had a much worse time with it than I did.
I have a progression on this whiteboard of what I wound up writing at what point in the game. So I started taking notes around the adjutant resolution boss fight. Was when I started taking whiteboard notes. I have separate notes that are not whiteboard notes that are like, oh, I wrote them down after a play session or something. Whiteboard notes are I was playing the game and actively stopped mid-thing to write something down. There's some good ones, some bad ones. First note that made me write this down is dumb boss health bars, because man, the health bars are ugly. They look bad. I don't want them on top of the... Yeah, they're on top of the enemy. Just put them at the top of the screen or something. Put them on the UI. Don't make them hover on the enemy. It looks weird. The fight that made me do that was Adjutant Resolution, because it looked very silly. It looked like a Destiny boss. A little bit later, I was playing, and Hyperius came out, and his little Vespa brute chopper thing. And I have to sit there shooting at this man for legitimately like 10 minutes. It was
straight, not stopping to shoot. Straight.
I ran out of ammo on 5 different guns just to kill one of them. And then had to go around the entire time and then find 5 more. It was one of the most frustrating experiences I've ever had because it was just mind-numbingly boring. It was incredibly boring. You can't step out of cover because he'll shoot you with his big scrap cannon in like 5 seconds, right? And you'll die. So you have to duck around cover and suddenly play this like you're playing Gears of War on the hardest difficulty. And just like take constant cover. Breaks everything about Halo. It was so awful. You can see my hands are going everywhere. I'm not normally like this. This was, as someone who loves boss fights, but Monster Hunter is one of my favorite franchises. I love Dark Souls. Boss fights are in my DNA, and this was horrid. And there were 2 bosses in the game that were like this. There was Hyperius and whatever his stupid brother was called, and then there was the final boss, Harbinger, in the final phase. Just as bad, just because Harbinger it's a fine fight until that final phase, but then Harbinger just starts teleporting everywhere. And if you have like the cool hammers and whatnot that you pick up, you can't attack her with it because she doesn't stop. So you can't attack her or you get instantly killed by her explosives. So what you have to do is then kite her around running in a giant circle over and over again until you can pop her with whatever ranged weapon you have for a few seconds at a time. It's super boring. And if you die at all, you have to redo the entire final phase of the fight with a ton of ads and a brute chieftain. Super frustrating. Those 2 boss fights are like the big negative points of the game for me, and I think the harshest thing is that it ended on that note, right? Where there was the final boss was like that. It was awful.
If I may, I would like to read word for word.
I'm done. That was my rant. It's your turn now, Brett.
Because I must say I am in full agreement, if not even more passionate. Do I get angry at games? Yes, even games I like. Do I get driven to actual violence by games? No, pretty much never. I have never thrown a controller or punched a wall or anything like that. That almost changed with Halo Infinite. The double boss fight after the artillery cannon mission is probably the worst and most frustrating boss fight in any game I have ever played.
Brett,
and there have been fights that exist
full on with a warthog and it does nothing.
And there have been fights that exist where if you hadn't been preparing specifically for them throughout the entire 50-hour game, your entire party would die in one hit. Looking at you, Star Ocean 2. I still hate this one more. I don't know how many times I died. I don't care. The guy in the brute chopper and his stupid brother with the jetpack are the worst boss I have ever fought in any game I have ever played. I have never been so mad at a game. There was a period of time where I was attempting to bend my controller in half out of pure agony. On Heroic, this fight is almost undoable unless you play it extremely cheesy and take forever, which again is not how you play a Halo game or how you should fight a boss. I see them every time I close my eyes, and yet I still cannot remember their names because as characters, they are entirely insignificant. None of the bosses, other than Escharum, actually mean anything in the story, except for the Harbinger, which I forgot about until literally just now.
Harbinger still didn't mean anything in the story. Are you kidding me?
You're right.
My one note about that is the endless suck.
Yes. If we didn't decide to do a games club on this game, this is where I would have stopped playing, and I probably never would have finished the game because this was so frustrating and there was so little going on within the game that I was enjoying to pull me along and keep motivating me. When my soul leaves my body after I die and I go to the underworld, I hope whatever god there is able to show me the different things I did to myself in life that ended up taking years off my life, just so I could see how many decades I lost to this boss fight alone. Whoever designed this boss fight needs to be blacklisted from the industry and never allowed to touch a game ever again. I hated this fight so much. Yeah, you could ask the people that I was streaming the game for when I was playing it. I was like, I became monkey. I fully reverted. Yes, Wyatt.
Professors?
Yes.
I played it on normal. I fought them when I already had a ghost. And I thought it was kind of fun.
I'm glad you didn't suffer.
Wyatt, if you're on Heroic, they like 2-shot any vehicles you're in. It's awful.
I'm gonna say this right now.
I had a Scorpion for part of it.
Fought them on Heroic. I'm gonna say this right now. I have fought them on Heroic. I'm probably I am the least likely person here to enjoy a game's difficulty. You know this. I am not super into like
I would say that with any genre
games.
that's not shooters, because you liked Returnal more than I did by a fair amount.
That's true.
I think that has changed a little bit recently.
I did play this game. I did play this boss fight on Heroic. I was annoyed by it. I would not say that I had the exact same visceral reaction that you guys did. And I cheated a little bit because on heroic I knew this boss fight was coming, and I knew that I didn't have my ghost because I did the towers in a different order, so I didn't have
Yes.
my ghost. So I came more prepared the second time,
Yes.
and I am very glad I did because wow.
For a first time player who does not know what is coming, I think
Especially
that is
my two
possibly.
weapons when I rolled up to that fight were the shotgun and the plasma carbine.
I'm so sorry.
I
they
could do
they
nothing.
hide for reference. They hide a rocket launcher in one of the wrecked ships there,
Mhm.
and the
Inferno,
non-brute
I'm gonna let you
chopper.
guys keep talking about this for a minute. I have to go do something with the dog real quick. I'll be right back.
He's got a vent.
I gotta go punch a wall.
I which, as you can see behind him, are made out of bricks.
Good luck, good luck, Ryan.
There's a rocket launcher hidden in one because that's one of the like 1% positive things that I will give this encounter is that they hide weapons all around it. It's like the arena should be cool. It's just they have so much health and they kill you in 1 millisecond, and I hate it. This just one brute at already like 75% health took an entire like all of a rocket launcher's ammo to kill. And I still had to shoot him with other guns after the rocket launcher was out of ammo.
The other
And
annoying thing
that's just too much.
The other annoying thing is that you can't like hijack their vehicles.
You can. I did
Oh
do
my
it.
god, I'm thinking of something different. I'm sorry. Right.
I EMP'd the chopper first.
Well,
I
no,
was
I
able
had
to do that.
Okay, here's what happened though. You can, but I had a bug when I went on heroic where they wouldn't let me in the guys because like I got him off of the his like little chopper thing, right? And then Master just kind of jumped off, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm still under fire, so I was like running over and trying to get it, and it wouldn't let me
Oh,
get in it. And I was like, "What's
that's
going on?"
so annoying.
That's right.
That was on heroic
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
that was even more frustrating. So yeah, no, it was on normal. I went in with a ghost and it was like not a problem. I was like, oh, it's kind of fun that it's like a vehicle based like boss, and I think I was enjoying it for that.
Conceptually very cool. Practice wise,
No.
horrendous.
It works on normal. It didn't bother me on normal because I went in with a
Which-
ghost and I was like, okay, there's this nice like wide open area, and we're all using vehicles and we're like flying around and stuff, and I thought it was fun on normal, but
I think
that's
it's
like that.
Go
I
ahead, Brett.
acknowledge that there's a possibility to have fun on a lower difficulty, but my
Yes.
experience doing the harder one first was so powerfully negative that every time I think, oh, I should play this game again, but on normal for the podcast this time, I would just think of that,
I did
and I would
immediately
go, I kind of
uninstall
don't
the
want to touch
campaign.
this game
As
again.
soon as I finished, I
Yeah.
just uninstalled it because I'm like, it was
And I
fun
don't
for
think I'll ever
one
play it
run
again.
through. Maybe I'll play it in a year if they add to it. But as of
Yeah.
right now, it was just kind of in a state where one run through was fun, but the end was just so anticlimactic. Nothing happens. I think that the reason it's hard to describe the plot of this game, and we're probably not even going to attempt to do this, is because the first like game's worth of things happened between this game and like Halo Wars, right? Where none of this is explored in the game until you pick up audio logs, which describe to you the plot of what starts the game out. And all of it sounds really cool, but I'm just like, why didn't I play this? Why did I not play the crazy mission to go finish Cortana off and stop the war? I don't know.
Or they explain, like, I think it's within the same mission too, that Cortana not only blows up I think it's all of Australia on
She
Earth
blows up
because
Sydney. Sydney goes
or
boom.
Sydney, excuse me.
For some
Sydney.
reason, it's always
because-
Australia. In everything, it's always Australia for some reason. I don't know why it is. It's weirdly
So
consistent.
she blows up Sydney with a guardian, and then she blows up the entire brute homeworld. All off screen.
Mm-hmm.
All like before these events now. I say this all the time. I've said this about The Last Jedi to Rise of Skywalker, right? A lot of people didn't like The Last Jedi. I get it. but to ignore it in Rise of Skywalker and act like it didn't
Is
happen
even worse,
was
right?
was a mistake. And this game, it does both. It's so bizarre. It tries to embrace 5, and at first I thought that's what they were doing. I was like, okay, good. You're not gonna like awkwardly write around it. But then they also do at the same time. It's like so much time has passed in between that giant cliffhanger in 5.
You vaguely hear
where
about
you
Spartan Locke in an audio log. Like, that's it.
And most people assume that he's dead because there's a boss that you fight where his helmet is like on the like.
But you find an audio log that confirms he is not dead.
Yeah, it's whatever. So much time has passed between 5 and Infinite, and then also Halo Wars 2 happens in there as well, where it's just like there's a whole game's worth, and it sounds like a pretty fun game, to be honest with you.
Yes.
There's a whole game's worth of stuff that happens. You also have basically the ending of Cortana's like character arc into becoming a villain with that as well.
The ending of her character arc gets given to you in a flashback, and I hate it.
You get the very last thing you hear from her is a pre-recorded message that is like the end of her like character arc, whereas like a lot of the other stuff that was really important to getting to that point was all done before the game even starts.
Like, imagine how emotional it would have been if that scene was a thing that you played in first person, and Cortana would actually like said those things to you as her final words. That would have been very, very impactful, right? And it's just not here because all the wind is taken out of its sails.
And it would have like made Cortana becoming a villain a worthwhile plot point, because I don't hate Cortana being the villain in 5 conceptually. I don't hate it at all. Actually, I quite like it. I think there's a lot of interesting like emotional stuff you can do with that, and like will that break the Master Chief from like a psyche perspective? Like there's so many cool things you could do with that. 5 absolutely did nothing with it. It sucked.
It's like you have this major plot point that needs to be addressed and just isn't.
And Infinite gives you like the cookie crumbles at the very end of that of that arc, and that's it.
Yeah,
it's dust and echoes, as Cortana calls it.
It's I would even from the first time that I saw like that first cutscene or like after the first mission, whenever they start like explaining like what happened right before the game started, I was like even just seeing it for the first time, it's like why didn't I play that?
It felt like that was gonna be the tutorial mission or something, right?
It should have.
It felt like what would happen is that you'd go through that mission and then you get like a 6-month like time skip essentially when you lose that mission, and so you're then picked up and then the game picks up from there, right? Like it would normally pick up. It's just missing the context.
I have a theory as to why they did that. And I'm not saying that I'm like 100% confident, but I have a thought. Something that someone pointed out to me in the beginning of the campaign is that when you first actually start playing, you're on board the gunship Gebraken, or however you pronounce it. It's a really interesting like mirror of the first game, where the first game is your ship is falling apart and the Covenant's attacking you. Here, it's like the mirror of that. Their ship is falling apart.
So you're saying it also has Force Awakens syndrome?
Oh God.
I'm just saying, if they wanted to play that, because I noticed that the second time around, someone had like pointed out, I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool actually, how you start the game in the position that the Covenant did in like Halo CE. Kind of a cool little like flipped scenario, but
I feel like that works just as well if you have that tutorial mission beforehand and then the real start of the game is then, right?
Yeah.
It feels like, I think it was honestly cut content. That's what this screams to me, is that they had planned this out to be a thing and realized they did not have enough time with the release window to actually make that like crazy set piece mission in addition to the other set piece missions they had and the open world, is what really it feels like.
It is so bizarre to me that you open a game where Master Chief gets his ass absolutely handed to him by Atriox, who is this big, like, awesome villain from like
what a cool threat.
Yeah, from Halo Wars 2, and he's like this super cool villain, and you get you like get your butt kicked by him in this cutscene. He's like, I'm the last face you're ever gonna see. Like, super cool opening. He's nowhere in the rest of the game.
And he's dead.
He's dead.
He's
and his replacement
dead.
his replacement is extremely underwhelming, if I'm going to be honest with you, compared to past like there wasn't really like a single person even in Halo 3 where it's like the last prophet, like there's never really been like one single person in Halo that's like, oh, he's the villain. But like if you can't compare the Covenant and the Flood to the Banished. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's just because I don't know if any of us have played Halo Wars 2.
What I did do was I got a complete plot synopsis, like the Spark Notes. I watched a video on the Spark
I
Notes of Halo Wars 1 and 2, which I feel like is required to understand what's
Yes.
going on here.
I agree with you because I didn't do that, and I have so many questions that I just simply do not care to get answered because I didn't care about the things that had to do with them in the game. And I
The
think
X
that 343 does this too much,
Yep.
where they
Mhm.
expect every single Halo fan to be like a freak who buys every single book, every single comic book, reads all of them 5 times, remembers everything that happens, all the things and all the little side stories and all the side games. And it's like do that for like Easter eggs or
Halo 5
when
was even worse with
yes,
this.
Halo 5 is terrible with that, but like keep it to the level that it is in like in Halo 1 Anniversary where you can look at the other Spartan pod and see that it's Kelly inside. And it's like, "Oh, well, who's Kelly? Oh, Kelly's Master Chief's friend from the book or whatever that came out when the
Or
first game
Fall of
did."
Reach, right?
Okay.
Fall of Reach is the classic
Yeah.
Halo book that's like, oh, that was a really cool thing that we just had as an expansion to the start of the game.
Exactly.
Hey, we can now turn it into an actual video game, right? Like, so many
Yes.
interesting hooks with that where you have opportunities to do these side media things. And like, I like Halo Wars. It's a fun RTS. I never played Halo Wars 2. I played the first one all the way through. And
I heard it was good.
It is good, but I don't want to have to play an RTS campaign
No.
to understand a Halo
FPS
campaign.
What it
Yeah.
feels like, this is what it feels like to people who aren't 100% caught up on like MCU stuff.
Marvel,
Yeah,
exactly.
Where
exactly.
you
I feel the same
play,
way.
what happens now is you play a Halo game or you watch a Marvel movie, and it's like, oh, link here to explain what's going on with this character. Link here to explain what's going on with this whole situation. And it's like, I have to play hours and hours worth of games, read tons of books and all this other stuff to figure out what the heck is going on. And
I think the
it's so
biggest
frustrating.
negative thing I can say about 343 with that is that unlike Disney, I do not have the confidence that 343's storytelling is going to make that worthwhile to where I'll actually like have a reason to care about Atriox, because he's so, everything we see of him is one note. Same thing with Escharum. Until Escharum dies, he is completely one note.
Yeah, he gets his character when Master Chief kills him, and he has like
Yep.
like a legitimately cool like warriors
Neat
like
character
send
moment.
off where like it's like it implies that like Chief actually had like some kind of like soldiers respect for him, like very, very Metal Gear stuff. Honestly, if
Yeah.
it like that's what made me think
And-
of. It's just nowhere else in the rest of the game.
And I was disappointed because they had a good basis for a brute, like a main brute villain to me. A brute, like an aged, like old brute who's like, I don't have a purpose in life anymore, but I finally have the Master Chief on this Halo ring with me.
Mhm.
This fight with you is
Yeah.
gonna be like, it's gonna give
The
my
final
life
fight,
purpose again.
right?
That is
Exactly.
a great like setup for like a villain, right?
Yeah.
It's very
That's a
classic
great
war
first
movie
step.
or something, right? Like very classic spy thriller. You know, you
It's
have
the
this plot hook.
protagonist giving the villain a purpose, which
Except
is
at the start of the
great. It's
game,
why-
I just don't have that plot hook, and so I don't care. Until
It's
No,
the
they
reason
introduce
why
it to me.
people. It's the reason why people like the Joker so much as a Batman
Yeah.
villain, because it's
Yeah,
the exact same dynamic. Batman gives Joker purpose. Like the animated series, he's like, without Batman, crime has no punchline anymore, right? Or something similar to that. Like, and you get it. You get their whole relationship and why it's as important as it is.
Yeah.
And they just
And
did nothing with it, and it
'cause
becomes
they had to spend
laughable.
They had to spend time. They had to spend because this is just short because it adds on to what you're saying. They just spent too much time because they have to recoup for all that weird time that they just couldn't have in the game because they have to just explain it to you. And any of the cool interactions that or cutscenes that could have been had with Escharum in it are now just things with Cortana that we should have seen.
Why can't it just be Atriox?
Exactly.
That's my question. Like,
'Cause
why have this? And look, they want to leave Atriox for later. Sure, whatever. Just have him come back. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Because Atriox, because again, the whole thing with the Banished is that they were like this whole separate like sector of the Covenant, right? And they became so powerful that the Covenant became afraid of them and basically cut them
Well, so
off of
powerful and
their
so
entire
extremist,
empire.
right? They were like the super
Yeah.
extreme version of the Covenant, which is cool.
Which is really cool. Conceptually, that's great. And so Atriox is like, dude, like, F everybody. I don't care. Like, I'm just here for power. And you can have that exact same motivation that you gave Escharum to Atriox. And it would fit perfectly with his
And it should
character,
just
from
fit
what
him,
I
yeah.
understand. And it would be great. And if you want to bring him back for more games, dude, it's Halo. There's so many ways you can bring him back if you really need him in more games.
Yeah.
Or have Escharum be his replacement, and that's why he's angry at you, is because you killed Atriox. It would give Escharum more motivation.
Yeah.
It just feels like there's so few characters in this game that you can even like have a story with, right? There's so little going on in terms of the story that like I don't have a relationship to like Sergeant Kelly or something. I don't have a relationship to anyone in these games in a way that it makes me feel like I need to do something. This way, I wrote down like every time they want you to get invested in a story now, they have to capture Echo 216 because there is no other character in that game where that has stakes, right? You have your pilot companion. There is no one else that can be like the crux of a story mission because there's nothing to care about.
Yeah.
For me, the relationship between Chief, Echo, and Weapon really worked for me.
Yeah.
Oh,
and that's
same.
why that's why
100%.
I'm not gonna completely like write off this as like Halo 5 level bad stuff. No, because at the end of the day, I care about the characters in a story.
Yeah.
Like the plot can be some weird loose garbage. Honestly, like I would prefer it not to be, obviously.
Yeah, but
at
it
the
is,
end of the day,
unfortunately.
it is. But if you have characters that I care about, and you're giving good performances, and they have good like interpersonal relationships with each other, I'm sold. Because at the end of the day, every story is character driven to me.
That is.
I have one counter to all of your points. It's going to tear your entire argument down.
Oh no.
The Banished's lip frame rate is atrocious. I literally had to stop and write this down because Escharum in his death scene, his lips were like moving at like 15 frames a second compared to everyone else.
I didn't even notice that.
What would happen is he would have like his animations would look like anime like stuttering where there isn't a frame, like a keyframe there. It looked like it was swapping between keyframes and there wasn't actually the interpolation that there needed to be to make it look good at 60 frames. And I had to stop and write this down because after that point where I noticed it, every single cutscene with the Banished was like that.
Oh god.
It was horrid.
But what I did want to say was, I feel like since day one, Halo 4, 343 has been trying to like make the Master Chief more of a character and kind of like humanize the Chief, which didn't work for everyone in Halo 4. I personally liked it, but not everyone does, and that's fine. Halo 5 didn't even make an attempt.
Drop the ball completely.
Who cares? I think this is a way to like humanize the Chief in a way that makes everyone happy.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
Because the thing that people didn't like about Halo 4 was that Master Chief talked too much and it didn't sound like the Master Chief.
At least here
it didn't bother me
talk
personally.
To, right?
Right.
Yes.
It didn't bother me personally, but he did talk more in 4, and he didn't have his usual like very blunt one-liners, right?
I did write on my board towards the start of the game, Master Chief is too vocal. I then crossed through it because I hit a point with it where I was like, all right, this feels much better now that I've gotten used to it. It feels good.
Yeah.
Because he's from the same. I just want to say, so for people that might not understand, is that he's from the same like era, later on in the era for sure, but like the same era as like Doom guy, Quake character, Duke Nukem, people that either say, Lank, Gordon Freeman, people who either say literally nothing or just say like cheesy one-liners and that's it. Mm-hmm. And that works for all the main Halo franchise. That works 100%. Because that's Chief's character. You're meant to kind of like put yourself into that suit of armor kind of thing, and it's just part of him being awesome. And I like the idea of humanizing that and analyzing it more and characterizing it more. But that's also there's a very thin line where you can just bring that into like really like Marvel quippy cringe territory or like over explainy stupid territory, and that's why I as well at the beginning of this game I was like, do I like this? Do I not? And I think at the end I really do like it
Yeah,
because they did a
I
really good
turned
job
around
with
on
it.
it.
they got
100%.
they got that balance because
Yeah.
like the best way to describe the dialogue, and honestly the best way to describe the story is like very reserved, which is exactly how Chief is as a character. So I think it
Mhm.
really worked
And it
well.
contrasts really
And
well with the weapon, right? Where she
yeah,
feels like a much better foil than like mid-series Cortana was because of the fact that she's very like fresh-faced and new, right? She's very overly vocal and is constantly prodding Chief, which is annoying at the
Naive.
start, but then it starts to actually like play into the story more and you get more involved. And then like there's a story beat where she's mad at you and you're like, "Oh, I actually feel bad about this
Yeah,
now."
yeah.
And I
I
really like that.
completely I understand but completely disagree with people that say that she's like too Marvel quippy. I thought it was that balance
her,
was
it worked.
perfect for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
I
for
thought
her,
it was
totally
great.
It was annoying at the start. I feel like that's the same reaction I had. Where the first hour, I was like, okay, this feels out of place. But once I settled into the rhythm that she and Master Chief had as a duo, and especially with Echo 216 as like the secondary character coming in, it felt good. I did have one thing with Echo 216 I wanted to talk about. So
Yeah.
Echo 216, at one point in the story, suddenly says he has no one left. This specific line really
Yes.
bothered me because the
Yes.
whole first trailer for Halo Infinite is the starting thing where he's sitting in the Pelican watching his wife and daughter, presumably, and you get the entire feeling there is like, I want to return to these people. That is so much stronger of a character motivator than him having no one to go back to.
Yeah.
And I really think what happened at some point during development is they realized they had no other characters, and if Echo 216 actually leaves, there is no one else for Chief to latch onto. So
Mhm.
I think that's what happened here is they were like, okay, we have to recycle this or get rid of this plot point because of we need this character to stick around. And I really think that was a bad move.
I agree.
Because it just like takes
I
a lot
think-
of it took a lot of my I was really into him for a while, and then they dropped that one line that just feels like it felt like a
Wait, what?
writer had just like put their hand into the scene and just taken the subtitle away and put something else in, right?
Yeah.
Looney Tunes style. It just felt weird.
They crossed through the script and then wrote in like a red ballpoint pen on the side, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
rewritten line or
It felt
something.
like Vince McMahon changing a promo.
It's
This
him
felt
him
like.
screaming in the ear of the commentators as they're trying to actually speak.
Yeah.
Which
And-
for
Go for
me
it.
at least, just because I want to stick on the thing with his family, is that that entire thing just kind of fell flat for me because just like I don't know if it was the vocal delivery or just the like I don't know like the child voice that they use or something, but just like the recording was a little like it just felt so stilted. It felt like robots doing it. It didn't feel like real people like taking like a recording to send their whatever like man of the house equivalent
I get
guy
that.
who's like dad or it felt like really stilted. And then you get to the fight with Invisible Elite Boy, and 343
go.
tries to do this cool like, oh, this is going to build suspense. This is the you walk out into the hallway before Cyborg Ninja and all the soldiers are dead and there's blood everywhere. This is like people hear that and people are going to go, oh, what's that? That's scary. And for me, it's like, this is so annoying. Like, shut up. It's just so stupid. I
Because
don't
he
care. I'm
lectures
not
you for
attached.
3 floors of this building where he's like, oh, this training is going to be super intense and you got to get through
It's-
what we
yeah.
train every day, and it was incredibly boring.
It was that, and also for me, I don't know if it was a bug or if I'm actually I don't know if I'm just stupid or something. But I spent like a good amount of time being like, all right, when is he gonna jump out? Is the fight gonna start? And it's no, because I walked over the like 1 inch like small diameter little like circle that the hologram's coming
They
out
need
of,
to pick up.
and I didn't know it was there. And I was like, oh, all right. Okay, I just thought that specifically was really stupid, and it kind of ruined the family relation for him to me because he's just a great character otherwise. I think.
Well, his entire character introduction is like so visual and like it works so well. Like that, I will never get tired of that pan around and then he's covered by the hologram, and then when it comes back he's like growing all that facial hair. So it's
Yeah.
like
Love it.
you don't have to cut away to say like 6 months later you get it. And you get that he's been staring at this thing for 6 months, and it's
Yes.
probably absolutely tearing him up
There was
inside.
that's
every
another thing I
time.
wrote down is every cutscene in this game, the cinematic quality is really, really good.
Fantastic.
With
Like,
one exception. With one exception.
what's the exception?
This was pointed out to me in a video that I saw talking about the campaign recently. There are so many times when it is just like weapon in chief, and if you put up all of the of like the different cutscenes where it's just them
does it just look the
talking,
same?
it's the exact same
Yeah.
like
I didn't
camera
really
shot,
count
which is
those as
disappointing.
cutscenes because they're just kind of interaction things that play.
Yeah.
I
When
think
they do use the
yeah.
camera in interesting ways, it's awesome.
Because
and
they love doing
I
the like
love it.
slow pan around Chief's shoulders that is very tense because you feel like someone's gonna jump out at you the whole time.
Mhm.
Like this,
And it
the
works
very
for
good
this
mastery
story.
of like camera angles here that I think is just incredibly strong.
It works for this
Which-
story very well.
I mean, we haven't even talked about it yet. The guy they brought back on the team,
Yeah.
Mr. Cutscene Man himself. Like the Joe Staten is like the narrative, like visual narrative man who like planned out all the cutscenes and like did all that stuff in
Mhm.
the original Halo games. And I think if anyone
Excellent.
like it's been a while since we've seen his work because I think he's gone to like writing stuff for other shows.
Did he
and
work at
games and things.
Microsoft for a while or something?
Something
Like
like that, I
Microsoft
think.
proper? Yeah, something.
Yeah. But like you can tell that just like even compared to like the things that I like visually in 4, just like the cinematography is just on another level with the cutscenes. And the fact that they
Mhm.
always just like zoom right back in flawlessly in the Chief's first person point of view is so cool. I love that touch so much. It's so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
It's very satisfying.
It's not. It's one of those things where it's like it is not something I expected in a Halo game.
Yeah.
But I really like it.
Really appreciate
Those are the
it.
kind of
Classy.
things. Those are the kind of things that 343 needs to focus on because it's clear from day one that they love. I don't think for a single second that they like hate Halo or anything. Because a
No,
lot of people are
no.
like, oh, they don't even care about this. No. They do, but I think it's very important to them that they make their own stamp on the franchise. And I completely understand that. I want them to. And these are the kind of changes that I think really work for them. It's like picking things that doesn't upset the fan base, but things that really work well for the game that you're trying to make, the story you're trying to tell.
That's what
And that was
really
a
set this
really
aside
good.
from Halo 5 for me. Is here, even though there are a lot of story beats that I'm maybe not a huge fan of, I don't really like how they handled the beginning and the ending. I 100% do not regret playing this game. Like that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I did enjoy playing the game. The story actually feels like it's going somewhere at least. Like there's a lot of little issues I have. Most of them are to do with the production, right? It's to do with timelines and how it's clearly unfinished. The last like couple of notes I have here are basically the endless suck because we don't know anything about them. They keep teasing the endless as like worse than the
Ooh.
flood, except we learn nothing about why
Yeah.
they're worse than the flood. They don't look worse than the flood. It's like weird
No,
floaty
they don't do
space people.
anything.
Then we get zero answers on anything else because they keep teasing, oh, what is the purpose of the ring? And then they literally say that the weapon has realized the purpose, right? She knows what the thing is here. And you get the idea, oh, it's like a prison thing with like DNA in it. And then it keeps going, oh, but it's the judge, the jury, and the courtroom all in one, and it's got the execution. They keep like adding things onto what this is and then never actually tell you anything. It's like
No.
someone just kept throwing buzzwords at the screen.
Also,
They all
one-
feel like buzzwords. You're right.
Yeah, one thing that kept bothering me is the big thing in Halo 4 and 5 was the reclamation, and now the
Yeah.
big thing in Infinite is the reformation. It's
Oh,
like
God.
guys, can you not? Did no one look at that and is like, we went from reclamation to reformation?
And
What
It's weird.
what are you even talking about?
one of the things I hated the worst, so one of the last lines they leave you on in this game is Echo 216, Chief, and Weapon are having like a nice conversation for the first real time of it's relatively low pressure. And Echo's like, well, what are we going to call you now? And so you go into, you should choose a name for the weapon. And it goes, oh, I've got the perfect name in mind. And then cuts to
And then she
credits.
doesn't say anything.
Exactly. It's exactly like. I don't know if any of you guys saw that really bad Fantastic Four reboot, but they do the exact same thing at the very end. They're like, well, you know, we're like a super team. We got to come up with a name, and they come up with a couple joke names, and then Mr. Stretchman. I don't know anything about Fantastic Four. Mr. Stretchman is like, guys, I've got it. Dun, and then it cuts to like the title.
Except
It's
here,
so
we
bad.
don't get a name at all.
Well,
It's
I
just
think
so annoying.
what they're implying is that her name from here on out is going to be Cortana.
No, absolutely not. That's a horrible, horrible
Which I
plot
don't
if they
agree
go that
with.
way.
So, speaking of which, the whole like twist.
I was
that-
waiting. I was waiting.
Here's the weird thing: the whole twist is like, oh, you're like a perfect copy of Cortana without her memories.
I feel
I'm
like everyone called that instantly.
no, look, because they said it earlier in the game.
Yes.
You're like, oh, you're a perfect copy of Cortana, and then at the end of the game, oh, you're a perfect copy of Cortana.
And she's like, what? Oh no!
looks
And it's like, dude,
Almost exactly
you
the
are
same. Like,
you are small, you have short hair, and you're blue. What do you mean? You're literally exactly the same.
but she's like
They made
snapping.
Cortana
You're
purple
a
so you
perfect
could be
copy.
blue.
I'm pretty sure the dialogue is like almost the exact same thing.
I
Beginning of the
completely
game,
forgot
he's like,
about that.
he's like, you're Cortana. You're a perfect replica in every way. End of the game, you're a perfect replica of Cortana in every single way. It's the same line of dialogue. What the heck are you talking about? We already knew this. So I was so confused. I was like, wait a minute, what's the twist?
It's like the
you
final
already
hour
said
of this
what's
game
the twist?
has like 3 twists, like quote unquote twists. None of them are very cool. It's like, oh, the endless are
No.
back. What does that mean? I don't know. Is it bad? I don't know.
Yes, they're worse than the flood.
What?
I guess.
And
I
then
guess
you
their
have
missions are going to be even more annoying.
the
Oh,
whole thing where
jeez.
you appear on the ring 3 days later in a desert. I'm like, what?
Don't even show me that.
It's interesting.
I'm angry
but
that was
have-
even in the game.
That should be like the
Also-
start of the next game, right? Like that's
Yes.
not a
Yes.
cliffhanger. That's the start of the next game. Because now I'm just like, well, that was dumb.
Also, their whole twist that Atriox is still alive. He doesn't have any of his like face paint on, so I didn't know who it was.
And I love that it is literally a post-credit scene from Marvel.
It
It's
is.
the same
Yeah.
thing, the
No.
same framing, the
It's
same
just
like
Thanos.
slow pan to
None of
what's
us-
going.
I mean, did you guys know it was? I assumed from like context in like the song that was playing, it was Atriox, but it looked nothing like him because he wasn't in his armor. It wasn't in his face paint. So I had to look it up. I was like, that's Atriox, right? Was that Atriox?
As soon as I saw the
I was
beard, I
gonna
knew it was
say-
him. But there was like the whole slow pan. I was like, is this gonna be some really stupid thing that they're pulling from somewhere? I'm just like. It
was
feels
gonna
like
say
everything
earlier-
they try to do has no payoff in this game. Right? There was no payoff for the plot points here, aside from Escherum's death. Because there's this whole bit with the Silent Auditorium and stopping like the Reformation or whatever, and it's just
Reclamation. I mean, Reformation.
there's just none of it pays off, and it's just so deflating.
The only thing
It-
that pays off is that the three main characters are like closer together now.
Yes, that is the one
It's-
through line that
You
I
know what
will
would make that
give-
even
I
better
will
is
say
if we had a
that.
reason to complete the game so we can return Echo to his family.
Yes, yes, but that is for what we have. That is, I think the only, not even like satisfying through line, like just the only through line that doesn't have like weird like
A bunch of like
S-curves in it
quotations
and,
and
like, figure eights.
qualifications of what's going on.
And I
Yeah.
think too they had a huge missed opportunity because like a lot of the game and a lot of the dialogue is like, okay, we gotta like get the UNSC back together. We gotta like get them back to their former. Why don't you ever talk like you're the only thing that happens on this entire ring?
'Cause
What's Keys doing? What are the other Spartans
They
doing?
keep,
It's
like,
everyone's
saying-
just waiting. Everyone's just waiting for you to
They
do
keep
something.
saying
It's
there's like a whole UNSC force on this planet that you're rebuilding, and you never talk to anyone. And it's like,
Dude,
I don't get the feeling that there's an actual organized force here.
when
what if
I'm
the only likable new characters in this whole 343 thing is Keys? I think everyone could agree Keys is a
Lasky.
fun character.
Lasky.
Or Lasky, excuse me. I'm sorry. God, brain. Everyone likes Lasky. I don't think there's a single person that doesn't like him. Like
He's good.
even through like the grinder that was Halo 5. He's fun. He should have shown up here and I was like, "Oh, thanks for like getting the Marines back." Or like there should have been some sort of payoff of like, "Oh, you got all these fobs unlocked. They're going to help you in some final battle that will like reward you for unlocking all these fobs and stuff."
But instead, you'll be walking around the wilderness and like a group of Marines will emerge from the woods like it's like a deer and her children. I saw that happen and I was actually like, am I going insane? Is that actually what they do? Because that was like towards the beginning of the game, and yeah, they just had Marines just walking around.
It
Just
does
literally
happen because
doing
I
nothing.
remember the first fight against the hunters. I had two pretty bad weapons, so I was like scrounging around for weapons, and then I turned around and a bunch of Marines came out of the forest with rocket launchers and killed them before I did
Yeah.
anything.
That's
And I was just like, what?
Speaking of rocket launchers in the wilderness, there was one time where I was
Oh.
walking over an open field, and it was like a rocket launcher was like it like sprouted from the earth like a potato or something. Like it's just like the ring is like it's your grow. It was so weird. I don't know if that was supposed. I don't know if someone was there and they died, but it's just on the topic of how disconnected from the rest of an entire other universe that apparently exists. It feels. It's just the way that they place the Marines and the way that they place the things going on like physically in the open world is just like it's just so weird. It's so weird. And I don't know. I'm putting in the back of my brain a little thing to talk about the Marines again, because when we're done with the story, there's more Marine things that I would like to say that I'm sad about.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
sad
getting
about
close to done with the story because we do need to move on to the stuff because we're already at an hour and 40 minutes because this is a very
I'm not surprised.
there's a lot to talk about here. Yeah, I think overall the story is just there. Like it doesn't feel it's not actively insulting like Halo 5 is. It just really feels like I think this will be a much better story when we have the second half of it.
Mhm.
But as it stands right now, this really feels like you're watching. It feels like you're watching Infinity War, and then you get like the final scene is not in the movie, right?
Yeah.
You don't get the scene of people fighting Thanos. They're just like, oh, we're gonna keep that till the next movie, and then everything happens in the next movie, and you're like, what?
They
Like,
don't
what was
even
the point of that?
introduce Thanos in this
No,
analogy.
they show one scene of him at the end, but you've already seen him before because you saw the tease of him at the end of the last movie. So they're treating it like a big deal again, and then he just kind of shows up for 5 seconds, and then you don't do anything else.
But
It's
it's carried. It's like it's a thing of like this is really really good. This part of the story really sucks, and it's just a weird like contrast because almost everything with Echo and Weapon works really really well for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, because again, that cutscene, it sucks.
It
that
feels
the
like that's where all the
Hyperion boss-
attention went, really, right? Like,
which is what they said. They haven't been shy about that. They're like, we're keeping a very small cast, and we just want to focus on these three people.
but it's called
which,
Halo
I can-
Infinite, and they want to make it a live service, and there's nothing to hook on to for the next games.
So weird.
And it is a shame that the boss fight that pissed you guys off so much happened right
Has
before
such-
probably one of the best cutscenes in the whole game,
Yeah.
which
The best
was
scene.
which is
Yep.
which is Chief. He gets down on one knee, and
Mhm.
he's like trying to console someone in the only way that Master Chief knows how to do it. And I was like, this is the kind of like humanizing the Chief stuff that works really well because you're seeing it happen like right in front of you, and it was
Yeah.
such a good scene. It worked
Yeah.
so well.
It was so
And what's
cool.
great is that after that, all of the voice lines from the pilot, when you're calling stuff down, he's like more cheerful now, and he's more
Yeah.
upbeat after that conversation, which was really cool.
And I also like
So many cool
the
things
scene.
happen.
The
Yeah.
scene more towards the end, where the pilot hugs the Chief, and Chief just doesn't know what to do. I'm gonna say right now, if Chief does not full body hug that man by the end of the next game, what was the point?
That's the character progression
was
that
the
I
point?
need.
Exactly. I just want to see this man show some love. He deserves it so much.
And the thing I'm so worried about with the next installment is this really feels like I'm concerned that 343 is going to try to do the cinematic thing. And they're going to go the route of we need to have a twist in our game. And the twist for the next game is going to be they're going to kill Echo 216 in some really unsatisfying way. I'm going to be like, this is... If they do that, that's going to be my breaking point. That's where I'm like, okay, you had this trio of really interesting
sacrifice himself.
characters.
He's gonna sacrifice himself, and it's gonna be like, oh, I don't have a family to return to.
But it's going to be
anyway.
the start of
This
the
is
game.
This is my life's purpose. No, it's gonna be off screen. It's gonna be in between.
You'll hear it as an audio call
right.
while you're doing something boring in the open world.
It's gonna start off with a text, and it's gonna be like, "Hey, Chief, you up?"
The thing I would hate the most, imagine they do the Destiny Forsaken trailer. Except that's with Echo 216 instead of Cade, and they just spoil the whole thing of it's about him dying. I'm like, come on.
Don't give them any ideas, Ryan.
Look, I'm telling you now, Joseph Staten, if you are listening to this, just give us Echo 216. Just let him live.
Yeah.
Let our boy be there.
I would not be surprised if all of the plot related stuff was 343 and the three main characters were all Joe. I would
Yeah.
not be surprised because there is
Yeah.
such a chasm in quality between those two things, and like the general plot stuff is so messy that felt like Halo 5 to me.
It
I was
did.
like, this is probably the story you guys wanted to do, and then he brought Joe, and he was like, I mean, guys,
Where are the characters? Who am I supposed to relate to in this
Yeah.
story? Like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ!
are we just doing Cortana again? It's been 3 games. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That man.
Ugh.
I
That
swear,
man.
if she says her name is Cortana at the start of the next game and that's what they were going for, I'm gonna be so upset.
It is some actual like
That
Rise
feels
of
like Rey
Skywalker,
Skywalker.
Rise Skywalker level garbage. I
She's like,
swear.
what?
Ugh.
What if she calls herself Cortado?
Sounds like something you get at like Chipotle or something.
I think it is. I'm pretty sure it's a Taco Bell menu item.
Oh.
I think so. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's an actual Taco Bell item.
Well,
Uh,
hey, if they
no.
have AK-47s and Chevy
Tahoes.
Tahoes in 2552, then they probably still have Taco Bell too.
All right, so I think we've kind of hit our end point on the story discussion because there's not really anything else interesting to discuss about it. It's a very mellow story overall. I do have one comment here that I need immediate opinions on. So one of my notes that I round up writing down while I had the game unpaused, super slow gondola. You guys remember the gondola mission where you're on that
Yeah.
thing? It takes like 5 minutes to cross, and there's like one enemy every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I was
It
just
felt
like,
weird.
Because they have like what? They have one type of sentinel that sometimes has a shield and sometimes doesn't, and that's the
Yeah.
only thing you're fighting for. that
occasionally
entire
they'll like
time.
rush at you and explode, but it
Yeah.
happened like I think once in my entire playthrough. So
It's one of those things where it's like the carryover from like the past Halo games is like Halo 4 and 2 have the gondola sections where you're just kind of chilling and waiting, but
Yeah.
in 2 and even in 4, in 2 it's like relaxing because like you got the chill music, you got this. Even back then, like the landscape is just really nice looking. How they did Delta Halo in that game.
Well,
And in
especially
4,
if you
it's
have the
very-
anniversary. Oh,
Yes,
looks
it's
stunning.
breathtaking looking.
Stunning.
And in Halo 4, it's like the opposite, where they're just constantly throwing things at you, and it doesn't even feel like you're in the same place all the time because you've got like different stopping points and stuff.
And it's
But in
very
this game-
overcomplicated Forerunner like
Yeah.
buildings and architecture too.
But in this,
Yeah.
it's still good looking. But I think isn't it even like inside? You're just in like a
Mm.
like a Forerunner structure, and that's
Mhm.
it. It looks nice, but yeah, not enough to keep interest
Yeah.
for that long.
And I'll add on to that. I think that the main reason I wrote that down is that's what really started to kill the pacing of missions for me at that point. Is I ended up feeling zero drive to go collect things like skulls and explore for weapons and whatnot. I think there was a distinctive point where it's just like, okay, I am enjoying the gameplay, but not enough to do the inane like side things I need to do to get the skulls.
Yeah.
Especially in some of the areas where there's so much like repeated rooms to explore. There's one area where you fight through the same like exact hallway 4 times in a row. Like this is extremely tedious.
It sometimes it starts to feel like a bad Destiny strike, to be honest. Because the other thing this game is lacking in comparison, and part of the reason they start to feel like Destiny strikes, one of the things that they're lacking from other Halo games is that when you look back, especially at like the Bungie era, right? They would try to come up with so many interesting ways to have enemies come into the encounter. They're not just there. They don't just walk up. They're like, okay, we're gonna have them flying in on like phantoms and stuff like that. Like we're gonna have their entrance be really cool. Whereas in Halo Infinite, it's like you just walk up and they're there. And it feels like every other game, whereas it felt like the original trilogy and everything in between was trying to introduce them into the encounter in an interesting way.
Yep.
And now that's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brett, I know you had Marines you wanted to talk about.
Yes, I'm refinding my note.
Your Marine paragraph. I think we'll
yes.
use this to discuss the open world briefly because I think that's the section to do this in. Wyatt, I know you enjoyed it a lot. I'm gonna get the negative out of the way first, so you can end on a positive note, right? So I think that's a better way to do it. So my negative bit with this game is that the open world to me, I hit distinctly at the sequence mission. where you have to go around 4 big towers and do like a little camp clear and go inside. I just hit the moment of like, this is so much less engaging than everything else that I have been doing. And then at that point, I just stopped doing anything in the open world. Like occasionally, I'd clear a fob if I literally walked right past it, just so I had a place to teleport to make the missions easier. It just had this whole. I think that ties into the Marines of like, there was no real reason for me to do any of the open world stuff, and the gameplay itself is good, but it's so samey that I never had a moment where like, I think I would have enjoyed the physics sandbox a lot more if, like Breath of the Wild, there were more environmental factors in different areas that played into it. Like imagine an area that's like low gravity or something, right? Things like that you could totally do in this ring setting that would actually play into how fights work and something like that. You know, that actually gives you reason to explore. I think that's where it kind of started to fall apart for me.
Yeah, I found my chunk. I know Wyatt is going to talk about the Marines and why they are fun and cool, but I'm going to talk about why they are dumb and stupid instead. First of all, if carrying Marines around with you was such a big part of the idea in an open world, just like it was in Halo CE, why can I only carry around a maximum of 1 scout hog full at a time? Why can't the Marines sit on the treads of the Scorpion like they could in Halo 1?
Why can't they drive a car so I can use the Warthog gun?
I was just about to say, why aren't Marines smart enough to get into vehicles and follow you around if you get into one that doesn't have enough room for them, like they could in literally every other preceding game in the franchise that had Marines in them? Why can't you at least order them around? Why aren't they actually useful in missions? I bring them to a story mission, and I mean I drive a Warthog with a guy in the turret and a guy in the seat, and then like 6 more Marines are following me on foot because the UNSC doesn't require driver's licenses anymore. And at the start of at least all the story missions, there are more Marines captured at the start, and you can save them, and they immediately jump and start shooting, and they still all die. They're useless in every facet of the word. They don't follow you inside to the missions. They don't do anything cool either. Watching Marines appear out of the wilderness like they're a mama deer and their babies, which I said earlier, is also
which happened to me with
the
the hunters and was very funny.
Yes. It feels so half-baked and unfinished, and I don't understand why it's cool or adds to the sandbox at all. I felt more than okay with ignoring all of them after I spent half the game trying to do something cool with them and not succeeding because they just didn't feel worth it after a while. And I'm literally exactly ready for Wyatt to be like, oh, well, I got my guys all with rocket launchers and I ran into a mission and they killed everyone who was sick. I'm sure if that happened with you, I am glad. But I didn't care. That's not why I play Halo in the first place anyway.
One of my favorite moments in my first playthrough, it was the mission where you had to go rescue that was a Spartan Griffin, I think, at that like prison.
Yeah, the captured guy.
Yeah. I loaded up a Razorback with a bunch of guys, and we like assaulted that like lower part of the prison. And as I was going through, I was like freeing more guys and stuff, and it was just this epic attack on this entire facility. And it was so much fun because there were Marines running around everywhere, and I was like constantly throwing them like better weapons because like if you free Marines from like the energy tethers or whatever, they start off with like a pistol or a plasma pistol. So I'm like scavenging through, finding better weapons to like throw to them and
you need
stuff
to play
like
a
that.
Mountain
And
Blade game. You would love it.
It was this awesome like full-on siege that I orchestrated, not the game, me.
With one more.
And that was
I know the vehicles.
And that was a really cool feeling where I was like, this attack was purely done by me. And it felt really, really cool. It's like, okay, you know, they're getting really hacked up by the Jackal sniper. So I'm going to like grapple shot up there and then take him out so my guys can move in a little bit further. Oh, there are more guys spawning down at like the landing pad and stuff. I'm going to like hop down and see if I can like help out with like that little firefight there. I don't know. I thought that was so cool. And so for the rest of the game, I was like, if I can take a bunch of Marines, if I can take a bunch of my boys to a spot, I'm going to do it.
So I had...
And yes, it's very disappointing that they can't drive other vehicles. They can't hop on the treads of the Scorpion tank. I agree with all of that. But I had so much fun, especially, and this is the other reason why I did a lot of the side content, is I wanted to get more Valor so I could unlock more stuff so I could equip my Marines with better weapons and drive them out. So it became this like nice increasing amount of return of like, if I put in the effort, I can customize my Marines and do more of this thing that I really like doing. And so it was like a nice sort of like loop in and of itself.
So Wyatt, after you described that to me, what I did is I went into the mission. The road like gives you a set of Marines at the start when you start that mission. There's a bunch that are captured nearby that you can go get. Yeah. So I did that mission with the Marines, and they were helpful for a while. I was in a nice like rocket hog with them. We went down half the thing. It was really real fun for a little while. Then we hit a barrier that I went over and opened up. There was a Wraith tank right there. I was like, oh, it's going to be awesome if I jump in the Wraith and go in and open up the path for them. What they did when I got in the Wraith is they immediately then ran into the next area and got immediately shot by all the Jackal snipers, despite there being many vehicles around me and a giant tank that they could not get into. And I think that, to me, is what broke it. Because one of my favorite missions in Halo Reach is the opening mission, where you get a Warthog. There's like 2 Warthogs, and there's a squad of soldiers that follows you. And you can get in the Warthog, and they'll drive it around to the different objectives for you. And you can then raid it with all of them and find them the additional weapons and everything that you can do in Infinite. You can do all that in Reach. And it was far more consistent because they would drive in a convoy, and you had this squad with you the entire time. And it felt so much more complete because the mission was designed around it. Where like this entire mission felt like it was meant to be played like that. And I think the road in Infinite was their answer to that. They wanted the same thing with the mission The Road. But because the multiple vehicles would not work, you hit that final section where you're clearly meant to get in the Wraith because there was another Wraith on the other side, right? Yeah. So you have to basically get in that if you want to have a chance at destroying that easily. So I was like, oh, well, my Rocket Hog's about to blow up. I'll get in the Wraith, and hopefully they'll survive long enough for me to find another vehicle. Immediately they go out and die. It's like, at that point, I was just like, this is not where it should be for this fantasy to work. Mm-hmm. I think that's what really broke it for me.
Fortunately for me, I never had a moment like that where it made me question like why.
And that was on normal too, because by that point I had turned the game difficulty down to normal. It wasn't even on heroic. So
I never had any of those moments, and because it's an open world and it's a sandbox, you either get those or you don't. It's kind of RNG with that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, that one wasn't open world. That was the mission, right? Yeah, that's the mission that was designed for it.
Oh, that's right.
So that to me is like the reason it broke is they had a mission that there's an equivalent to in every other Halo game, basically, where you have like the Warthog with a group of soldiers, and you're meant to go on the crazy Warthog run, but there's so many barriers in the way, and everything just feels like it's too condensed, and there's too many enemies that can kill them in one hit. It just really felt like they knew what they wanted to have and just could not get it working. And my hope is that they update it so it does work. Because then that is like the thing that I think could bring me back to play the campaign again, is if they update the AI of your companions to actually like use vehicles properly, roll out in convoys, maybe you can set a waypoint on the map or something and they'll go to it.
That would be
and like drive you there. That to me is the Breath of the Wild equivalent to Halo that I would really like, is the ability to have those open world moments that are less constrained by the game's like inability to have your Marines go into different vehicles and whatnot. Mm-hmm. It feels like it's like the Final Fantasy 15 issue where it's cool at a base level, but there's so much better that it could be, and we have seen that better before in like other Halo things. Yeah. So I think that's the key. It's like, I'm not saying it's awful. It doesn't feel like actively bad, but it just didn't encourage me to interact with the world enough because it just wasn't rewarding. To me, at least. Which I think is the difference between like it being a bad system and just not super rewarding unless you're actively like really trying to engage with it. I think it just kind of is a thing where I know what they wanted to do, and it's a really cool idea what they wanted to do, but they're close, but they're not quite there.
Yeah. And I think the other big thing too, it's a small thing in the game, but it's a big reason that kept me like enjoying that. Their dialogue is so funny. It is
that I agree with. Yeah,
excellent. Like one of my favorite ones is like, at least this isn't as bad as Reach. Well, yeah, okay, this is worse.
Especially because Weapon will sometimes like chime in and have things to say about different squads or different fobs or whatnot. Yeah. Like you actually have some custom voice lines for them, which is cool. It really feels like, I think that's how I would describe Halo Infinite as an experience. Close, but not quite there, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is really what I left feeling like.
I do have something on that as well, because that reminded me that I had thoughts on the dialogue, and I'm gonna get flack for this one, and I'm sorry. But I really wish everyone would just shut up, because everybody in that game is always they're saying something funny, they're saying something silly, and it's like, dude, this guy just told me that his family's dead, man. I don't want to hear you telling me like literally like TikTok level like quips as you like throw a grenade at me or something. I killed a grunt and a jackal said, "Oh, grunt dead. Good day." Like the first time it's like, "Oh, that's really funny," because nobody in the Covenant likes them. They're useless. And then like 5 times later it's like,
When the game starts to get
"All
really
right.
serious.
That's yeah." It's like I've had enough. Like maybe just have the grunts do it. The grunts do it, and then everyone
Yeah.
else can do it. And I would have been your daddy. But that makes me think, because is the I would have been your daddy skull in the game? Is that a thing? Because if it is, how much further can you go?
I did turn
Things
that
are
on
already
immediately.
silly.
So that's a skull in one of the first 2 missions. I turned that on as soon as I unlocked it. The like extra rare dialogue. To be honest, it didn't feel that different from normal.
Which is, I think, a
didn't really
legitimate
notice
like
much of a difference.
it's weird. And I would even dare say that it's a problem, because it's like, if you don't if you want it, then you could turn the skull on. And if you don't want it, then it's like, okay, I got the skull. I don't want to turn it on. In other games I would turn it on because it's different from the original dialogue, because it's funny and wacky. Cutscenes would sometimes be like different and stuff depending on like difficulty and if you have the skull on or whatever. But for this game, it's just like, not with the 3 main characters. They handled the Marvel quip level perfectly with them, like we said.
Because
But
Joe
with
probably wrote the dialogue.
it's yeah. For the I keep wanting to say the Covenant because I really don't care about them. The Banished,
I mean, they're an
and
offshoot of the Covenant. It's still kind of correct.
it's yeah. Uh, it's just too much for me, and I wish they took themselves more seriously, because I think
The
that
story
compiled with
treats
the
them
fact
very seriously.
it's the story treats them seriously, but they just act like a bunch of like just idiots all the time. They
I'd
don't
argue
like
that the elites and the brutes, the ones that are supposed to be like the scary ones in their ranks, they don't joke around that
I think maybe
much.
they needed to be
They
a little bit
do.
more liberal with putting dialogue behind that skull. Because I'm the
Mhm.
kind of person, as soon as I get that skull, I'm going to turn it on, and it's not going to bother me, right? Like, I didn't have an issue with the
Yeah.
dialogue being goofy. I do agree it does get goofy at some weird times, but for me, that's not really something that bothers me. Again, I like the Yakuza games that constantly whiplash you between comedy and someone getting murdered in front of their parents or something. So,
And the other thing to keep in mind too, like, and this isn't going to be the case for everyone. It is for me. I feel like we've all like silently accepted it, but there is this thing with Halo where like the story takes itself very seriously, but when you really think about it, the gameplay in the sandbox is real goofy.
I love that.
Like,
That's one of my
no,
favorite
no,
things about Halo.
and that's what I'm saying, is that like there is that, and it's fine, but there is that sort of like tonal discrepancy there.
Yeah.
So if all of like the Marines and the grunts and stuff are like being super quippy during the combat, I'm fine with it, because the sandbox and the combat is already so goofy.
I think
to
it really
begin with
depends on who you
anyway.
are, right? Because I've heard people make
Sure.
that complaint about Uncharted, but I think they're also wrong about Uncharted because Nathan Drake's a very quippy person, so it does end up inevitably being a quip fest.
And they're clever quips.
Yeah,
That's
they're
the
clever
other
quips,
thing.
right? Like, I think I think a lot of people just have this attitude when they play a game that gets even mildly serious that it should always be serious, and I get that opinion, right? Like, I'm not saying it's a bad opinion to have, but I do think if you follow that, you're going to miss out on a lot of experiences that might be a lot better than you're expecting, because sometimes that tonal whiplash is really, really unique and interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which I want to say, I'm not like, oh, either full comedy or full serious and that's it. Like I tons of things that I like do like that back and forth, that tonal whiplash kind of thing. Sergeant Johnson says, "Oh yeah, I know what the ladies like," and then like 10 minutes later, the city is destroyed. My God, everybody's dead, and then Halo ODST starts, whatever. But it like, for some reason, just like this game, I don't know if it's just like a different amount of humor, but just like compared to the other Halos, this one had a lot more just like silliness into it. And I know Halo has like I just gave an example. I don't have to say it again. The silliness in it, like Wyatt said,
It
but just
almost
for
felt
me
like
personally. It's just too much. And
Almost felt like it went for the Immortals Phoenix Rising brand of humor, where it's just kind of like almost a constant in the back of your head of like something is gonna be making a goofy joke or something.
It's much better written than Immortals, I would say.
Yeah,
Immortals,
like I'm not saying it's as
I haven't
bad.
played Immortals.
sometimes Immortals is like
Immortals either is really funny or
completely
falls
flat.
completely flat. There's not very little
there's
in between
no
with
middle
Immortals.
ground. No middle
But-
ground. You're either it's actually pretty funny, or
I mean, maybe having a thing where it's just like you won't get those dialogues within a certain story beat.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that would be nice.
Being quiet because there's a train.
I don't know. Yeah, I heard the train. I'm trying to find a thing to springboard off of, because I still think
I think
the
we
open
are
world-
mostly done with it, what we wanted to say. Is there anything else that we feel like we're missing? Because we already talked about whether or not we recommend the game, and I think that still stands true. Is if you have Game Pass, absolutely worth your time to try it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
did-
a lot of people aren't going to keep it installed forever, but
Mhm.
fun to play.
There
for
is
a
one
while.
thing I want to mention.
Go for
we
it.
mentioned this, I think, in our like early impressions. There are very, very outside of skulls and like some fun little like plushies that you can find of certain characters in the open world. There is absolutely no point in exploring or going off of the
yeah,
beaten
not at all.
path, because everything that's important is marked on your map. And they could have just done a couple things, and it's like instant, easy
Dude, the
exploration.
skybox
Don't
always has a cool snow area that you can see in the distance that looks really cool, and you never get to go play in that area.
all they had to do was just have Spartan cores and like the armor stuff not marked on your map, and there you go, like instant, easy exploration. And like put it in areas that are, because there are some like, oh, there's this really sharp, like tall mountain peak that you can only get up to if you've upgraded your grapple shot or you have like an aerial vehicle, right? So you're like either
Yeah, I
like
did that.
Skyrim mountain climbing up this like mountain, or
That
you
was
like
one of
getting
the
a
first.
wasp or something.
That's like the
And
only
I was
open
like,
world stuff I did is I spider climbed everywhere and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
So, but imagine if you went into those weird places, or you saw a cave off the beaten path, and you saw the like Spartan cores, or you discovered a new weapon that you can then get at the fob. Easy exploration.
It really
right
feels like
there.
they needed to treat Spartan cores more like Korok seeds, where you only need to actually collect like a tiny number of them, right? And they're just scattered everywhere to get you to go to places. It just feels like that would be a better incentive for exploration.
I do think that
Having-
choice was made because one smart thing I think they did do with this open world is that it is an open world, but it's not too big. It's not, it never got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm spending too much time getting from one place to another. I think they got the size of it right, just in terms of like, you know,
It's as big as
from
they could
one end to
possibly go
another.
with only one biome. I think is the
Yeah.
where it ends up being.
It's not Ubisoft big where it's like, why is there so much empty space? Why is it this big?
I will say it is a little strangely sized in that whoever the like transportation association of the Forerunners did not plan for there to be scorpion tanks driving on these roads, because that's like the first thing that I shot for, because I love driving scorpion tanks in all like the other older Halo missions that let you do that. It's like my favorite Halo vehicle.
Yeah.
It's just such a cool design for a tank, and it feels cool to drive and shoot and stuff. Did not feel very good to drive around the Halo ring at all, because the trees don't fall over like they do in like a Battlefield game, and like every single rock and plant and everything has like full collision, and none of it like phases through. I don't care how dumb it looks. I don't want to have to do like the Austin Powers 90,000 point turn to like go in a mostly straight line when I hit a pebble or something.
This feels
That
awkward.
was very frustrating for me. It does,
Yeah.
yeah, because I want to drive the Scorpion to the mission.
I will.
'Cause what else am I gonna do
One
with
thing
it?
I did repeatedly have issues with, and thank you for reminding me about the clutter on the ground, is that there are a lot of areas in this game where you will get caught on the geometry of clutter on the ground, and I don't know like why these things have collision boxes.
I don't know.
It's what I call it's what I like to call dice syndrome, where the like level designers are completely, it feels like they're completely separated from people who are working on like core movement and stuff.
Yeah,
Because it's like if those two teams had been talking, they would have gotten rid of that like awkward, because like Battlefront 2
Yeah.
did it really bad. Halo 5 or sorry,
so
Battlefield 5 had it really bad.
I mean, this felt
Where
like
it's just you're
Skyrim. Like it felt like I was getting
slipping
stuck
over-
on rocks constantly, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, even like in the smaller spaces, because I mentioned it earlier, because it doesn't deserve like a huge thing or anything, but a part of why most, if not all, of the bosses in this game fell more than flat for me is because their AI, at least on heroic, is just run at you full stop,
Yeah.
shooting or getting ready to swing. And it's like if you have like little bits of cover, boxes or something, and you're like trying to fumble around to switch to the radar pulse to see the invisible guy, and then switch back to the dash to get out of the way of time, and you had to reload or something, and you're all of a sudden like Master Chief like trips on his shoelace and like falls back. It's like it's so frustrating
This game
because
really
you
needs to
die
look
in 2 or 3
at like
hits.
Metal Gear bosses. Heck, look at Destiny bosses. As
Do
rough
it,
as
yeah.
Destiny can be, Destiny has some really cool boss fights, and I think
I think
taking from that
Brett
would be
and I
really
were
good.
Brett and I were talking about this. I think the best boss fight in the entire game is what's the Sentinel
The
guy's
sub
name?
monitor, the
The
sub monitor boy.
what's
Yeah,
his
yeah.
name? I keep wanting to say Exuberant Witness. That's
Adjutant
5.
Resolution?
Adjutant Resolution. Thank you.
Yeah.
Best boss fight in the entire game. It was
Well,
a
because
pretty
it feels like
decent
it has
boss fight.
mechanics.
Yes,
You
It felt
shoot
like
the
a
floating
Destiny
lights.
boss.
you shoot the thing before you get to shoot the other thing. There's phases in a
The
boss
laser is
fight
actually like well balanced because you can drop your drop wall, and even though it does a lot of damage to you, it does very little damage to your drop wall. So you can actually
it
use it
doesn't
as like
sprint at
a
you.
blocking shield. That fight's cool. They use it twice, and it's
Yeah.
fun both times. Like,
Yes, I'm glad they used it twice because that if you're gonna use anything twice in that game, it better be that because that was the best fight in the whole game. And if they add
And-
any more, they need to be at least as mechanically dense as that.
And they are not shy about reusing their boss fights, as we've learned from Halo 5.
yeah. Yep.
God Almighty.
All right.
Um,
Any other
see if
major
any
points?
small
The one thing I
things.
do want to mention with the second like J something Stalker Man, that boss fight to me wasn't like outwardly super bad or anything, but it was the exact same boss fight as the first boss that you fight. Just the lights are off
Yes.
this time, which
Yes.
to me was, I don't know, it just felt kind of weird. Where he was like built up for a large portion of the game, and then he's just kind of the same thing as another enemy.
I liked it. It felt very like, and again, this is on normal.
The area is really cool.
I hear on heroic, it's an absolute, because I haven't gotten to that part on heroic yet. But on normal, I liked it because it was very like cat and mouse, and I was waiting. I was like, okay, gonna make a sound, and I was just kind of slowly walking around, and then I had my thruster ready to go, and I was like, okay, there he is, thruster, boom, and then it's. So like it wasn't boring because it felt like there was a lot of tension being built.
So
to
I
the
realized
next
something
time
with
where he
that fight,
shows
Wyatt.
himself.
You can melee him, and he won't have time to attack you back whenever he gets in range. So he never hit me once.
Oh my
I just
God,
meleeed
really?
him every
Holy
time he
crap.
came within range, and he just bounced back far enough that I could just backpedal, and he
That's
never hit me a
awesome.
single time.
That's amazing. You just parried him to death. Holy crap. For me,
This is
the
kinda
meme
silly.
where it's like the guy who's pretending to like speed run or whatever is in like the webcam at the top corner of the screen. He's just drenched in sweat and he's just like and people just put it over like every like
Yeah.
thing and he's just going insane. That was me during the second stealth guy fight because he just kept running at me and I didn't have enough
If
time
you just
to
melee
like
him,
even
he
figure out
doesn't
where
hit
he
you.
was. I didn't know that because I'm still thinking and this is reminding me of something else that I want to bring up because it's like every single thing is attached to like 40 other sub problems in this game for me. It's like the melee in this game is a lot more powerful than it ever has been for multiplayer for sure. And you're mentioning this now is making me realize probably for campaign also. And I don't know if it's the range or the speed. It's not the damage because it does the same amount of damage that it's always done. Well, since Halo 2, where it
I
does like
think
the
it
half
does
shield
the
thing.
damage faster, is what it feels like to me.
I think so.
It has more
'Cause
of like
this
a
is kind of-
magnetic lock onto your target.
Yeah, it feels this is getting back in the multiplayer a little bit, but I do think that because this is something that we haven't talked about because I haven't thought of it until recently when I was really thinking about it, and it's that the gunplay in the whole game, I think we can all agree with a little bit of improvements could
Some
actually
balance
be
can be
perfect.
wonky, but the actual gunplay is great.
Yeah, it feels great. What the multiplayer becomes sometimes is guys running up to you, shooting at you with the perfectly calculated amount of assault rifle bullets, and by the second they get to you, they punch you. And that calculation of time when that happens is like 1 second.
Oh,
And it's
there's
like, well,
at a certain level, you start reaching people that do the if you punch someone once and then hit them in the head with a sidekick, instantly dead.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
And
that
it-
can be very, very
It's the new
startling.
noob combo.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's extremely frustrating. I don't know if it's just like the PC player base is bigger and it's just like the button combo pressing is like faster with like mouse and keyboard or something or what, but it's just like
It's
that's one
easier
of
to
the big
pull off with
reasons.
keyboard and mouse, like that
Yeah.
specific.
That's one of the reasons that I stopped playing as of late completely until I'm waiting for new stuff to come out because it's just like everyone else who plays this game even more than Wyatt does and have just gotten like super crazy sweaty at it. It's just like I can't compete. I don't want to, and they play in an extremely annoying way because the melee is different than it's in every other game, and it's just every kill feels like a melee kill, and I hate it. I
Yeah,
don't like it.
I get that. Okay, so I think closing comments from everyone, and then we'll wrap up the episode. For me, I definitely again think this game is worth your time if you have it on Game Pass. I would not pay $60 for the campaign experience that we were given. I think for some people, it will have that amount of money's worth of fun, but I think those people probably already have Game Pass or Xbox Live so they can play multiplayer, and those people should not need to buy it, right? They should probably already have it on Game Pass. So I honestly think if you haven't played a Halo game and you're looking at this like, oh, should I shell out $60? Do the $1 for 3 months of Game Pass thing because you can beat this in 2 days, right? Like, it's not that insane of a game. I really think this is not a good selling point for the whole like campaign multiplayer split, especially because it feels like with multiplayer we've got a lot less supporting content this time around. Where like the biggest sticking point for me in multiplayer, every Halo game, I love rocking my purple and orange Spartan. Can't do that. No way I can do that in this game. And that to me is like the single thing that's like, because when I have that, I'm happy, and then I can just play the game to have fun, right? But here I just can't do it because there's no color scheme for it. So it just feels like there's a lot here that really needs to be sorted out for people that are paying for it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, who wants to go next?
I'll go next. It's I don't find it difficult to be like objective about this game, but when people point out very like obvious flaws that I do agree with, I'm always just like, yeah, I don't care though. Which is not the case. Like I do care and I want these things to be improved, but it's like with the campaign, it's like I think like the core like combat, like the gameplay loop is so good that like it really drags along the other weaker
The amount of
parts.
fun you had made up for it.
Yeah, I loved, messing around with the Marines and stuff. I think the aspects of like the three main characters really brought the story, like kind of dragged the story along in a good way for me. Multiplayer, I'm gonna keep playing it, and every single issue that we've talked about, I 110% agree with. But I do not think that I'm gonna stop playing this multiplayer anytime soon, because it's got its hooks really deep, like into my brain, and so I find it really hard to be objective. But every single complaint that people have about this game is 110% fair. I'm gonna keep playing it though.
All right, Brett, you
For
get the closing
me,
words.
I'm sorry. For me, I do want to say before I'm gonna flip it around because it's better to end on the positive. For me, this game fell flat in a lot of ways, but also for me, it wasn't super disappointing because I've had a very, I think, justified negative view of 343 so far because they've had more hits or more misses for me than hits. Uh, and even the games that have been good, it's like only the multiplayer's fun or only the campaign has like a compelling story, and that's like it. It does feel like this is the game that has the most of like both good, but there's still so much wrong with everything here. It like you can tell without a shadow of a doubt that there was so much rushed, so much like cut from the game, just truncated completely. Um and there's just like all around like the story just drops off a cliff at the end, and even at the beginning has a bunch of stuff missing from it, and things like the villains and side things or whatever just need more like fleshing out for me to care about them. And the multiplayer not having the stuff in it, I know that's like separate than what you're paying for, but it's still part. It's a Halo game, they're one game, so I have a hard time considering them different things. And there's just so much lack of that meaningful content that still has yet to be added, that for right now I really I can't justify I'm glad that Game Pass exists so that I could come to this conclusion fully educated. But having come to this conclusion, having played the whole game and like 80 hours of the multiplayer or something, I don't think I would really recommend if you only have like the $60 option. Don't do that right now. Maybe they'll do like the Destiny thing or whatever. Where like, I mean, if the expansions cost money, I mean, they might add it in to like a bundle that costs just like the $60 or something like that. Maybe wait for that or something to at least get like a better, more complete story. But that's the big thing for this is that it's not like Halo 5 comes out and it's just like and it's just like complete deadpan, like nobody really likes it all that much. Everybody's like just screaming hatred at it. This game, they're going to support it for a long time, and I honestly really hope that they do. Because more than a lot of live service games like Destiny or whatever where they come out and they say, "Oh, we're going to support this for the next 10 years." This game has potential. This game, even if the UI can't be expanded because they just fell asleep on that day when they were coming up with how to make that or something, I don't know. Like the game itself, like yeah, it needs more, but they could add so much more to it. Like the story could be cool if it just had more time, which if they add
And an
more things to
ending.
it, it's and an ending, which but yeah, if they add more things to it, they can add on an ending, I guess. I could still be playing the multiplayer if I had literally any reason to feel like doing so. They added new things instead of just having like weird like monetary practices and like kind of half-baked like customization and stuff. The open world could be cool and I could enjoy it if it just felt like they weren't chasing the trend of a couple other
Yeah.
games that came out that people liked. And just what do people like? Open world. We could do an open world Halo game, I guess. Put it on a ring. Cool. Like do that. There needs to be more than just having things that are in other games, and that's the baseline. And I think they could add all these things just in the future. So if you're looking to buy it now, I say don't be in a rush. Just wait just a little bit longer. Elden Ring's almost out. You're gonna have the open world game that's gonna kill all the others. I'm gonna say it right now. Uh, and hey, if you really want to play a game where you just shoot a bunch of people, the multiplayer is free. So there you go.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a good sum up of most of our thoughts on it. So with that, as always, podcast airs 7 a.m. Tuesday mornings Eastern Time on the podcast platform of your choice. We're going to catch you all on Sunday night with a live stream of the podcast, and again, aired on Tuesday. Well, good evening, good morning, wherever you are.
We did it.
Made it through.
Never again.
Next time, Cyberpunk.